Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another exciting Jim Cornette experience. Today, I'm in a major motion picture, and AEW is doing sitcoms, baby. Plus, morals, check that, morale is low in the WWE office. All that and Dark Side of the Ring, too. And joining me, Hawaiian Brian, the podcasting lion, the king of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, Mr. Co-host to you. He's got the highest morale in the history of morals, the great Brian Last, everybody.
Aloha, Jim, and hello again, friends. It's wonderful to be here. Another fine day. That song gets us in the positive spirit.
I don't know. You've screamed in my aloha and about busted my eardrum. Fortunately, it was held. The eardrum was held in by these vice-like headphones.
Oh, you stop it!
That you've got me. That's the one thing you couldn't replace. Was the thing that actually causes me physical pain when we did this upgrade, and now we sound like the fucking super duper extra sound quality high def vinyl pressing of Dark Side of the Moon. But I still have to have my eyeballs are starting to pop somewhat. I looked in the mirror. I looked like Marty fucking Feldman.
I think that's a way to keep your youth, though. You know, if your eyes sink in, that's not helpful.
What if they bug out? Is it helpful?
Well, it evens out. It'll even out in the end.
Fly.
It'll even out in the end. I don't think it'll be Marty Feldman level just yet.
I got to keep my young, impressive good looks, Brian, because I was on the red carpet here last week. This week, actually, we're still in the week that it was. I was on the red carpet because I was on the silver screen. Other people are green with envy. What other kind of colors can I incorporate in this thing? The Queen of the Ring was premiered here in Louisville, Kentucky the other night. I went and just everyone had a fine time. And Camille came up from Nashville. She's living down there. She ought to be a country music star. With her spare time now, that
can she sing?
She's not. I don't know, but who would notice?
To be a country music star, she has to do something.
Well, she's in Nashville, so right there you go. But Camille came up, and Ash Avildsen came, the director and the writer of the screenplay, and Emily Bett Rickards, who plays Mildred Burke. I don't know where she lives, but she came here to where we live, and me and Dean Hill were representing the Louisville stars of the film. But we had a nice time. Got to take Stace, and we took her mother and stepfather and had a nice little seating area there. We're not too close, but not too far. And a bunch of the fans came out. Both shows were full. And I say a bunch of the fans. This is the movie business now. Should I still say fans like it's wrestling? A bunch of the moviegoers, a bunch of the excited local citizens. They came out and we took a bunch of pictures. As a matter of fact, there is video of this, of me in public, that was shot by Hotchkiss Featherbottom that has been delivered to the Arcadian Vanguard offices. And it's some of it, whatever may indeed be usable, is going on the Arcadian Vanguard, is going on the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. Now, bear in mind,
might as well have given a camera to Helen Keller. I don't know what the hell Hotchkiss was doing.
Now.
What was he doing? What was he filming?
No, it wasn't his fault. I told you they did the Q&A after the showing of the movie in the theater, and they just kind of lined us up in the front underneath the screen, and the house lights were like, it looked like Whitechapel in the 1880s that Jack the Ripper was fucking lurking around. It was very dark, and it was shot from the side because the people were in their seats, and the camera people couldn't get in front of the people in their seat. You might not see any of the Q&A, but there was a few other things that happened,
and you may hear parts of it.
Well, there was a lot of hubbub, bub. Have you ever been to a movie premiere, Blind Last? Have you?
Well, I try to go to one of them every now and then.
Well, it's there's a lot of hubbub and there's noise being made and things, but I guess we'll tell people if any of that makes the YouTube channel.
When we put up footage that looks like it was shot on Super 8, you'll know it's from the film premiere of Queen of the Ring.
Oh, come on. That's my high quality telephone that I did cameos with, that has the super duper. Of course, I had actual light and quiet in my office when I was doing them, but something's going to go up, isn't it? You didn't just shit on all of it yesterday when you told me how bad it looked.
No, it's definitely. I think it needs to be seen. I think if we cut it the right way, it'll look very artistic.
It needs to be seen.
I think we can make it avant-garde just by kind of splicing some of it together. You know, here's someone's foot, here's the wall, here's the ceiling.
Like one of the movies that they made on Gilligan's Island, a Harold Hecuba production.
Looks like one of the movies Yoko Ono made. I don't know what. But we'll get something out of it. There'll be great content coming to the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. But what was it like for you to sit there and watch a movie and, I guess, anticipate when you would be in it and see yourself on the big screen?
Well, and here's I mean, even if you have read the script, and obviously there were many more days of shooting that I was not involved in, where, like in the wrestling business, they improvised something and went with it. So it's not, just recited word for word from the script. And so I was seeing a lot of this stuff for the first time, and even, getting the flavor of it for the first time. And I got to be honest with you, and we'll talk about, as a documentarian, and you know me and you know you, and as a historian, I should say, it's not a documentary, so that part drives me crazy, that every fact and figure and place and name is not mentioned. But as a movie, it's fucking great. And I think they got something there, because not only as a period piece, they shot it well. It's very artistically done. This is not some cable access production. You think you're at the carnival, or you think you're back in the 30s on the street in front of the Sealback Hotel. It looks the same way now it did 90 years ago or whatever. But also, the non-wrestling people, because there were quite a few people that came either because they had heard the movie was shot in Louisville, or, it's a premiere, it was on the news here. And they were new people that were extras or whatever, or my in-laws who don't know shit from apple butter about Mildred Burke or female wrestling, but they like the movie because it tells a great story. So having said that, again, nobody looks like those people. I said, did I tell you this, or did I say this I said it when we were talking to Camille. Francesca Eastwood, that played Mae Young, she had asked me, she said, do you think I'm doing her justice? I said, I think you're doing her charity. I mean, my God, Mae Young would have had to have plastic surgery not yet invented to look like this young lady. But so facts and dates and places have to be somewhat overlooked, and nobody looks or sounds like Jack Pfeffer. But from what I've heard from people who are just looking at it as a movie and can be independent because they don't know the story, the movie's great. And I play very pivotal roles, Brian. I'm lobbying for nominations from the voting members of the Academy for, an Oscar for best cameo at least, or isn't there a best newcomer, best debut?
There may be an age cap on that.
And well, I'm now wait a minute. I just heard the other night on Turner Classic Movies that Sidney Greenstreet was 65 years old before he made his movie debut. So just think about that. But nevertheless, it opens nationally at a theater near you on March the 7th, Queen of the Ring. And again, Uncle Dave has reported that I actually play Sam Muchnick. And
it was in the Observer? I didn't see that.
Yes. I was several people have brought it. Oh, you were playing Sam Muchnick. And no, and the interview we did with Ash Avildsen, I think we mentioned it. And also I did an interview on video with Ash, which hopefully meets your fucking discerning standards. But no, I play like a composite of state athletic commission authority figures and NWA representative authority figures that they would have had to come in contact with over a period of the years, because you couldn't introduce 15 different fucking miscellaneous characters and have the audience understand who they are. Why did I do my third scene if I wasn't established as being that person in number one and number two? It moves the thing along. So I'm not any one person, but since Martin Cove was Al Haft, he started calling me Sam, just because we were sitting there bored watching him shoot one day in the background and couldn't move for like 10 hours.
Well, I guess the question is, you're insisting you're not Sam Mushnick. It's a composite. However, is the official word from the filmmaker and the studio that the composite's name is Sam Mushnick?
No, on the credits, I am.
What does it say?
God damn it! Now oh shit, I forgot. NWA representative or athletic commissioner, or there's no name attributed to me. But I am, and the credit is James M. Cornette, because they just took it the way I signed my fucking deal to get paid. But I'm not an officially named character, although I think I turn in a stunning performance once again. I have to say so myself, because nobody else is. No, many people are praising it. My in-laws, my wife praise it. You know, many people unrelated to me I'm sure are praising it. I just haven't heard from them yet.
Well, you said it. March 7th, Queen of the Ring opens up. Go see it. Let us know what you think of Jim's debut performance. Also, an Easter egg, he plays one of the girls in one of the scenes where they shoot.
Hey, now wait, no, that got cut. That was we were just testing the light that day when I put that costume on.
I believe you played Gladys Killam Gillum. Isn't that right, Jim?
Oh, boy, Killam, I'll tell you what. Here, wrecked him. They nearly killed him. We want to say just real quickly, in a more serious vein, as we're being juvenile here, we want to send best wishes to Ryan from the UK. He just, many thanks from the UK. He didn't narrow it down any further, but Ryan wrote us, his wife had been in the hospital last week, and he was having to go back and forth between visiting her and be home with their daughter and their little chihuahua. But his wife is feeling better now. She's back home too, so they're all together. But he passed some time listening to our show. So it was when we were debating about either how fucking bad Dick the Boozer is, or just Chris Jericho in general. But at least now your wife is home, so you continue to listen to us. It'll probably make her sick again.
I'm sorry.
Well, not that he wants that.
I'm sorry, but Ryan. Yeah, the show will get better.
It might be an unnecessary, but unavoidable side effect of the thing. Have I told you what we're doing in March? We got a big show, by the way, today. And Evan Husney with Dark Side of the Ring is going to be on. We're going to talk about all the episodes coming up on season 10. But have I told you what we're doing in March at Cornette's Collectibles?
No.
Would you like me to?
Is it spring training at Cornette's Collectibles? A baseball theme for the month?
It wouldn't. No, I'll tell you, I got a bat over here, but I'm not allowed to. It's put behind glass. No, the much maligned Hotchkiss Featherbottom that you like to poo-poo his ideas. He had such great ideas. The whole sale thing and the bonus item. If you buy one, you get the other thing. Well, we're doing it again in March. Now, the February sale is over with. The action figures back to regular price. However, still, the deal goes on the entire month of March if you buy any Jim Cornette action figure, Midnight Express, or Heavenly Bodies tag team set, anything involving something with a head on it. Then you get the free 2-hour classic wrestling DVD from the 70s and 80s from the Wrestling Gold series. Any figure at all whatsoever, you get the free DVD. And this month's featured product, the behind the curtain graphic novel that has been an award-winning, I'll get you that list of the awards after the show, an award-winning graphic novel. This month only is $5 off its normal price. You get it for $19.95 autographed behind the curtain at jimcornette.com. That's what's going on in March. I figured I'd get the financial news, out of the way there with all of the sales and the various prices, because apparently the WWE, UFC, TKO, I don't know if there was any bull figures there. There's some bull figures in here, all right, but bull riding figures, I don't know if that's involved yet. But it has this giant megalithic corporation has just sent out its earnings report, Brian, and I need help here. You're the Wolf of Wall Street, and I am just, again, a simple small town bird lawyer. So I'm going to give you the headline, and you got to explain to me, how the fuck can this be that the UFC and WWE umbrella, as it were, grossed $2.8 billion in 2024 and ended up making $6,400,000 in profit. What the fuck? I'm going to pay more taxes this year than they are. But at that point, was it worth it? All that work, Brian, all that struggle, all that work, all those people going to all those places and beating up their bodies and working in the office and slaving, working their fingers to the bone. All of that 24 hours a day, some going on 7 days a week, somewhere around the globe, all these people to make $6 million? The fuck is going on here?
It's funny if you really think about it, like some guy comes home from work. Hey, I had a great year. We made $2.8 billion. Oh yeah, how much did you get to keep? $6.4 million. It's not even in the same category. They have a lot of debt, and it's a big company with a lot of expenses, even though they keep firing people. And Ari Emanuel's now a billionaire. I saw that.
Well, I think that the people running the thing are doing just fine. But when you think about it, that's kind of some kind of Tony Khan level stuff to be willing to spend almost $2.8 billion to make $6 million at the end of the year. And again, it's being reported that, the Kung Fu lawsuit.
Well, no, it wasn't Kung Fu. It was just Kung Lee. He has nothing to do with Kung Fu.
He was using Kung Fu.
No, I don't know exactly.
See, there, you don't know what discipline it was.
I remember watching him. It could have. I don't think it was that, and I don't think it was Kung Fu.
Could have been Taekwondo. See, you never know.
I think he was a kickboxer or something.
Well, and then see that maybe he'd have been, if he'd have changed disciplines, he would have been more successful. But that's like $375 million. And part of it is being paid this year. And they paid $250 million in interest. But again, that's okay. So there's five. You got more than $2 billion left over, and they make $6 million. The fucking profit margin on Cornette's collectibles last year was much closer to the gross. When we got down to the net, they missed the net and they fell all the way in the fucking hole. They're down the well.
When you worked for WWE, wasn't there one of those years where they netted like $6 million, or am I wrong? Or gross? No, it couldn't have been gross at that point.
No, you're thinking about the year that Vince was pissed off was 1995, I believe, or 95, right. 6 into the fiscal year, whatever. He lost $6 million.
That's what it was.
And he was fucking highly pissed, but I just can't fathom taking in $2.8 billion. And by the time you finish doing whatever the fuck you need to do, there's only $6 million somehow left over. And UFC is apparently most of the blame there, right? Because the WWE doesn't spend that much fucking money. And they were both about even in what they grossed. 1.4, well, yeah, about $1.4 billion each. But am I just picking at nits here to think, my God, you would think there would somehow, this has to be a tax dodge or something for the IRS, because how the fuck there was only $6 million left over?
Well, you're good with your calculator, Jim. What percentage of 2.8 billion is 6.4 million?
Hold on, let me just enter that.
I'm sure that's exactly what it sounds like when you try to enter that.
Yeah, blow me with your calculator to enter that is the response that I'm getting here. You remember when you used to be able to, when the Texas Instruments calculator first came out, kids, and it became a thing in the public schools. It was great when you would write, like, what was it, 8008, and turn it upside down and it looked like boob. Whatever, that was a big deal. Well, that's about what I've got to say about the earnings report there, Brian. I think somebody needs to crack a whip at the office, maybe some later hours, put these people their nose to the grindstone, because, well, I mean, they've got to be ashamed of themselves, the employees, right? That's why we're hearing the morale is low, because they're ashamed that they took in almost $3 billion and they were only able to keep $6 million of it. They don't think they're doing their jobs properly. That's why they're all depressed, right?
Well, these reports started coming out about morale issues, and not necessarily in the locker room, where it seems like everyone's just having a party. Or anyway, it doesn't seem like it has anything to do with the arena. It's all in the office, the new office. I don't know how much of this have you seen. I saw a little bit about it, but the story started going around. I think Brandon Thurston did a big write-up on it. And it's interesting because there's supposed to be this, I mean, they're making more money. Let me rephrase that because of what we're talking about. They're grossing more money than ever before.
Yes.
Obviously, it's not the giant net you would hope for with that, but is it something that should cause issues with the workforce that aren't the executives?
Well, I mean, I don't think that they're yet going to the lengths that Vince went when he made them take the water coolers out and not bring in any more bottled water or whatever. But we're hearing that at the same time as these grosses are setting records, these gates are off the charts. The rights deal, they're talking in billions of dollars, and they're cutting employee incentives, telling them they can't have any more free tickets. Cutting what was the goddamn plan they were cutting, where the employees would benefit from it in the end of it was an employee incentive program. The point is, all the people working in the office are getting put through the ringer, while these figures have never been higher, and still some way they say they're only making $6 million. So that's why morale is somewhat low around what do they call it now? Is it still Titan Tower #2, or what do they call that building these days?
You know, that's a good question. I don't know what they actually call it. But how would you feel? Because you were never really there for that, where you're not getting a raise, where you're expecting a raise, where usually there'd be an annual raise, whatever the situation may be. You're not going to get it. You're not going to get increased benefits. You may lose some of your benefits. At the same time, you could see it's a publicly traded company. The major perks, the stock, everything being given to the top executives there, you could see how that would cause problems. You never had that. It was never like, we're struggling, but Vince just gave himself $28 million.
No, and that's the thing, is even then in the 90s, the amounts of money were somewhat realistic that, that anybody was talking about. It wasn't off the charts like this. And no, you got to think for those people that are there in the office doing whatever they're doing, whatever department they're in. If they're getting a whip cracked at them and they got to live in that, I'm sure it's still an overpriced hellhole, Connecticut. To go through all that, and they're seeing the people running the company that are literally worth billions of dollars, and that the executive down the hall from you is just got $50 million worth of stock or whatever. And meanwhile, down the hall, even further, there's people getting their heads shit on. These people got to think, what the fuck? And now they're cutting my goddamn free tickets to the shows, and I don't get a goddamn Christmas bonus. That's got to be, and these people keep that thing going one way or the other. They've got to do their jobs. It's not like the company has ever been noted for bloating their staff of employees where people are sitting around with nothing to do because there's too many of them. So that's kind of a slap in the face. No wonder their morals are low.
Well, no wonder.
Well,
I don't know what else to say. I mean, again, it's an interesting new era for WWE in this regard that, Vince McMahon is Vince McMahon. Now you have a bunch of figures who everyone knows, and you could see they're all just getting a ton of money. Vince, rewarded lots of, like Kevin Dunn was getting tons of stock. But I guess at least
the world's most miserable millionaire.
I guess at least some people felt that there was possible upward mobility, or at least they had good benefits. Whatever you want to say the excuse was, if all of a sudden you start cutting all those things, you start losing good people.
And it's always better to have good people than bad people, as Mama Cornette used to say. Well, should we talk about something good before we talk about something bad?
We could try. Let's lift it up. Let's go.
Let's lift it up, baby.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, and I know it's several days old, but I wanted to make mention of a couple of things on this past week's Raw from Cincinnati on February the 24th. We're apparently in Cincinnati for a television taping. They had 12,259 people. Holy crap. I mean, it's not even in the realm of realism anymore. This Netflix, whatever the fuck Netflix did domestically, I figured it would increase their worldwide audience, but why are people now just watching or reacting to Raw like this because it's on Netflix when it's been on TV in other places for 20 fucking years, 30 years?
Oh, I don't think it's just Raw. I think it's across the company. I think NXT is having a remarkable hot run right now. I think SmackDown obviously is, and AEW was just in Cincinnati with the hometown boy Jon Moxley. Remember, it was a smaller room, which they're doing now, and it's the right thing to do, but it just didn't look, it didn't have the energy, it didn't have the look. And then you see WWE come to the same town, and it's night and day.
And boom goes the Dynamite. But there were two segments that were kind of the opposite ends of each other that I wanted to point out real quick. And I'm not going to go through the entire exchange word for word, but Logan Paul was in the ring. He was cutting a promo. He's got heat. He's a good heel promo. And apparently he really is a dick. So it works, and you can tell. And he said he's going to win the Elimination Chamber. And so he's a star. The people see him at that level, and they don't like him. And then suddenly, boom, like Mussolini with Skyline Chili. Brian, have you ever had any Skyline Chili from Cincinnati?
No.
Heavenly shades of night are falling. It's Skyline time. That's the jingle.
Oh boy, no, let's not.
Because they were open late. Oh, they've been there. Look up Skyline Chili. They've been up there in the Cincinnati area since at least the 50s or 60s, and it's a whole new presentation of chili. You'd love it. And it's got the spaghetti, or it's got the 5 ways, or it's got all kinds of stuff.
Whatever gets you to stop singing. And again, we have a lot of audio we're upgrading still. If you hear peaking because of Jim singing, We're working on it.
You hear peaking, because that was me hitting a note that that even a modern microphone couldn't pick up, because it has such a rare octave to it.
Sounded like a Mayan death whistle.
So you sound like a disemboweled cat. So here comes Punk, and they're chanting CM Punk, CM Punk. And Punk was wearing the Chicago Teachers Union shirt. So Punk supports education, and Logan Paul supports the guy who wants to abolish education. So at least we got that clear on who's on which side. And, they cut the promo on each other. And Logan Paul, that's the difference, because he still isn't that experienced on what he's doing in this world. And he does great heel shit, but he still has that element of, I'm saying this to get a reaction, whereas Punk is so fucking natural. But Punk's more natural than most of the boys. But, Logan Paul's doing the heel shit, and it was good. And he mocked Punk for being injured, and it's only a matter of time before the fans are chanting for me and all that stuff. But Punk was zinging him. You're a dime a dozen loudmouth kid who does and says stupid things for a reaction. There's no substance to you. And me and the other people that you mentioned, Cena and whoever, are legends that make history, and you're a flash in the pan that won't be here long enough to make history. You're going to be history. And Punk is going to win the Elimination Chamber and face Cody, blah, blah, blah. But Punk said, I'm Satan himself in this business, and you're nobody. And in Logan Paul, in the face-off, he slaps him and rolls out. And Punk says, run while your legs still work, because when I get you, you're going to understand why they chant my name. I liked it. You get a clear baby face. You got a clear heel. You understand what their fucking issue is. And the delivery was very good on Logan Paul's part and excellent as usual on Punk's part. And I want to see it. Now they've set that up. I want to see that match. It doesn't.
You think it's Mania?
Well,
and they set it up before this. Remember, all of a sudden, Punk took a shot at Logan Paul. Was it an interview with Sammy? One of his recent confrontations with someone took a shot at Kevin Owens. You even lost to Logan Paul. That's what it was. So they've been kind of slowly building, and then the Royal Rumble elimination. Do you think it's Mania, this kind of match?
Well, but see, with The Rock coming in to, disrupt whatever the fuck's going on, you never know where they were going or what the final Mania card was going to be. But if it's going to be Cody and Cena, Punk's going to need something to do. But nevertheless, the thing is, they've got multiple options. They've got all these top guys have issues with each other to the point where you can do something like this, especially if you've got a member of the board of directors coming in to insert and inseminate himself into things. But this made you want to see Logan Paul and Punk. And that would be the goal.
Yeah, I thought Logan Paul killed it here. I thought Logan Paul was exceptional. And you say he still comes across, whatever you said, in an unbelievable way.
Well, not unbelievable,
it works for
but
him.
he's saying yes because he's a dickhead.
He's a heel. He's a heel that clearly enjoys being a heel. That makes him a bigger heel.
Yes, and you can tell that he has prepared a public statement to tell people how great he is and what a dick, or what shitheads they are. But it's still, Punk's so natural that you believe him. You believe that he is, and there's some element of truth to this, that Logan Paul is indeed a fucking flash to pan, and the kid is shouting obscenities to get noticed.
You want to make people believe? Take a shot at him over Crypto Zoo, or whatever his crypto thing was that apparently there's a lot of people who feel like they were owed some money, or whatever the situation. He's suing CoffeeZilla. Whatever the situation is, ask him about that.
No, nobody ever said Logan Paul was the soul of honesty now. But the point is, they made you want to see this with this segment.
You know what? They made me want to see it, although if I think about it, it's not an easy match for either guy. Like, as I'm thinking about them working together, very, very different physically in terms of style. Logan Paul is tall and lanky, although muscular. Punk, I don't know. And Logan Paul isn't. Punk in there with someone who knows how to work, it's amazing. But Punk in there with someone who, either memorizes a routine or just doesn't have the instincts that you wouldn't have if you haven't done this day in and day out for a while.
Right, yeah.
I don't know. I actually wonder how that match would be.
Or can Punk work with him enough to bring him up to a level to where without stunts, because that Punk is not going to be engaging in double springboards off the top rope through furniture to the floor, whatever the fuck. Can he bring Logan Paul up to where does Logan Paul have the drive and determination to have a really well-worked fucking match to his repertoire of crash test dumminess?
Hey, and I'll take those promos leading up to WrestleMania, back and forth, Punk and Logan Paul.
Yeah, and and we've said Logan Paul is we've praised him for being as good, having matches that good with the experience level that he was at. And of course, yes, they've been walked through or run through or gone through or whatever ahead of time. But at the same time, if he's a good enough athlete to do the moves that he's done and put everything together, then he's also a good enough athlete to be able to tell a physical story if he's got a guy leading him in that direction. So I think we'll see if, as the veterans used to say, if he can keep his ears open and his mouth shut, I bet you it's good. It would be pretty good. I'm about to say gonna. We don't know if we're getting it or not.
And it's good, too, because it gets Punk away from the guys that he's been working with pretty much nonstop since he came back. Seth and what's his name? McIntyre, obviously. It's time for something new, and this is something very, very new.
But the problems is that the other big major monologue segment or soliloquy or dramatic rendition on this show was Cody in the ring and with our friend Seth Franklin Rollins. And it was later on in the program. And as much as the thing with Punk and Logan Paul made me want to see them do something, this didn't work. It didn't do anybody any favors. It didn't get
this rock stuff. It's this rock stuff. It's killing Cody.
That's exactly, yes.
It's killing Cody. Yep.
Because they were having to talk about this shit that you could tell that the people didn't want to hear about. Because Cody came to the ring and he asked, again, instead of, what do you want to talk about? It was like, Cincinnati, I'm pretty sure I know what we're supposed to talk about. And they didn't want to talk about it. And he was so down and, and what does it mean to ask for a man's soul? And they did it. And then he was
still don't know, by the way. That was never answered.
No.
It was just a question into the ether.
The question is hanging in the air, but that Cody was going into one of the ones that you don't like, and now I see the promos where he's trying to with flowery verbiage and eloquence of language make up for the fact that they know story here that anybody wants to hear told to them. It's come out of nowhere and it's been shoved in, and this audience ain't looking for it. And he said, it's good guy 101 that I never lie to you. I will never lie to you. But then he said, this decision that I'm faced with doesn't just affect me, but my wife, my daughter, my sister, my students, my nephews, my mother, the memory of my father. Dusty got a nice ovation. And then he said, the offer is everything that I would fight and scratch and claw to get without having to fight and scratch and claw. He was presenting it like he was thinking about it, like he was actually legitimately considering it, and they didn't want to hear that. Do you agree with me or not from the people's reaction?
That's the thing. I don't think anyone, and it just happened on Friday, so it was a few days earlier, but it had a major audience. It was The Rock. It was known for at least enough time that people tuned in. Nobody came out of that and said, I shouldn't say that. The audience that came out of that and said, I want more of this and I want to see where this is go was a lot smaller than the people who just wanted Cody to continue what he was doing, working with whoever was going to win the Elimination Chamber at WrestleMania. Cena. I mean, I think they would have wanted Cena more than, I mean, they could still pull Cena into this, but the Rock stuff is unnecessary.
Well, as he got to that point where, again, you're left with the thought that, is he considering this? Which just doesn't do Cody any favors. Then Seth's music plays, and here he comes to the ring in a red leather raincoat and baggy red leather pants. And I wrote, this promo wasn't getting over, and now I don't know where it's going. But Seth's whole thing is, what the hell are you thinking? Which, again, gives credence to that Cody is thinking about this, because Cody's not denying it. He's not blowing it off immediately. Like, I'm not thinking about this shit. What the hell are you thinking? We fought The Rock and the Bloodline last year, and now he's back, and he wants you to sell him your soul. And that you didn't slap him in the face is a slap in my face. And then Cody said, well, Seth, that sounds awfully judgmental coming from you. I'm like, God damn it. God damn it. Now, no. Because now Cody is fucking, Seth just said what all the fans are saying to Cody in their head, and now he's telling them they're judgmental is what is happening there, because somebody is crafting this story. But he's, you're judge. The Rock didn't ask for your soul because it's tainted, because you've turned on people. You hit so-and-so with a chair and did this and that and the other thing, but you were my shield at WrestleMania, and you helped me achieve my dream, even though you had a bad leg and blah, blah, blah. And I wrote, this is long and going nowhere. And Seth wants to protect Cody from making a mistake that he made years ago, doing all these treacherous things. And he tells Cody, don't make me hate you, Cody. God damn. And Seth fired up and said that he wanted to face the good Cody because he's still going to win the Elimination Chamber and then fight Cody and me, but he's not coming for his soul, just his title. So he gave him a pep talk before he told him that he was going to win the right to kick his fucking ass and take his belt away. This was not good. Was it good to you? It wasn't good to me.
People like the motivated Cody. People like the rah-rah Cody more than I would, but they do. They don't like the sad and this was like Hangman Page and MJF the other day in AEW, except they're not going to wrestle each other. And again, we're putting over, it's all about The Rock, who's not even there. So you have the world champion talking to another top guy, all about someone else who isn't even there, and they don't even say outright what the hell he wants. What does it mean when someone wants your soul? That's a really deep question, Cody. Why don't you tell me what you think? We don't get anything on that. And the other question is, based on what happened last year, the pivot, because the fans were rejecting what they were getting from the Dwayne Johnson camp, and WWE amazingly reacted quickly. They can't do that 2 years in a row. That'll cause a problem. Right? How did they go 2 years in a row and go, Nick, you got to sit down and talk to this fucking guy. He can't just roll up and do this shit. We've come a long way since Gewurz was writing for the show, and this Rock stuff is self-indulgent, which only works if it works. This ain't working. He left the ring from that Cody segment on SmackDown. The fans were quiet. I don't know if I've ever heard the fans that quiet when The Rock left the ring after any of the comeback segments since like 2000 whatever.
Yeah, well, because they're confused, because he's a prick 1 second and he loves them the next. And then he comes out afterwards and tells them, I enjoy playing this wild, wacky character of the final boss. They're like, he's just He's just coming in because he can. They don't like that.
And that's the other thing, because it's The Rock doing that at a scrum, that shit goes around. You know, it always goes around whenever anyone at AEW does it. Some of them stay in kayfabe. Tony Storm is the wacky Tony Storm at the scrum. But Dwayne Johnson, immediately after this confusing segment, going out there and saying, oh, you know, I loved what I did. Cody loved it too. And we don't even have to wrestle. I think that's the genius of what I did. Again, Jericho disease, talking about the genius of the idea you have.
The magnitude of him.
And now we have this. We have Seth Rollins coming out there to console Cody Rhodes or whatever this was. This can't continue.
Otherwise, on Monday Night Raw, also the Women's World Tag Team title match. You said, watch this match. It was a really good match. Bianca and Naomi against Liv and Rochelle. And as I watched the match, it's good. And afterwards, I said, the match was just average. The finish was incredible.
You thought it was just average? I mean, the fans were really into it, especially at the end. And
no, the finish. I'm not. But now the finish was about the last 5 minutes of the match.
Okay, good. I thought you meant like just the last thing.
No. See that? Well,
okay, good.
See, that's pedestrian thinking. Pedestrian, I say. When they were what they did. I didn't time it, but I say the last 5 minutes, but it was probably a good 5-minute go home cue where they went into the roller coaster ride of the build of the false finishes and the peaks and valleys and ebbs and flows and twists and turns and ramadama ding dongs of their finish. And that's what I'm talking about when I say, you know, not only I've talked in the past about how, you know, we'd have guys get a 3-minute cue or a 4-minute cue or whatever to go home. That's not just the finish, not just like, oh, small package. That's going into what you have called for a finish. And that's the old Eddie Graham shit. You know, Kevin Sullivan said if they had a 15-minute match, Eddie's finish would take 7.5 minutes or whatever. But the match itself was average, but not only, and I'm not just indicting the talent here, whoever their producer was or whoever figured this finish, it was fucking brilliant, but everybody in the match did it perfectly too. And they were in the right spot at the right time, and they got the right reaction, and Dominic interfered, and they got multiple 2 counts, and that's where the "this is awesome" chance started coming, because there was a lot of back and forth and hot false finishes and things where you think the baby faces have triumphed, but no at the last minute, or the heels have got the fuck, but no at the last second. And then finally, while Naomi is about to do whatever the fuck she was going to do to Liv, Rochelle posted Naomi and Liv pinned her, boom, 1, 2, 3, and got a big pop because people like Liv Morgan. Now that she's fairly iconically a heel, they're kind of getting into her. And it also is a title change, but that's what I mean. You know, a lot of times, even average workers, if they just click just right, whether it's a single match or a tag team match or whatever, and they've got a really good finish, they can have a 4-star fucking match. Or you can have guys that are goddamn some of the premier workers in the business, and if their finish sucks or their styles clash or whatever, it's going to be bleh. So, you know, every once in a while, your finish will really elevate the match if it's got the right twists and turns and people take the ride with you. So I love that. And everybody involved did a wonderful job. Allow me to give a round of applause. It sounds like a meeting room of the Future Farmers Association.
What do you think of Dominic?
But yeah, it was very good.
What do you think of Dominic, the way he worked ringside?
Oh, yeah, well, he's got a lot of oomph to him. He has energy and commitment, the young whippersnapper. I'm glad to see him doing well. He was a horrible babyface. This is so good for him. Remember with the first year he was a babyface, we said, Jesus Christ.
Oh, you.
And it made Ray look rotten too because his fucking geeky kid was 1.5 feet taller than him. Must have fucking married the tallest woman in the world for the genes to come out even. But I wonder I don't know that I've ever seen her standing up next to anyone. Is Rey Mysterio's wife 7'2"?
We've seen a picture of her. I believe she's maybe 5'5" at the very most.
But she got tall genes.
But I thought it was an excellent match, excellent finish. Liv and Raquel are really good together. The fans are really into the Liv, Dominic, Raquel thing, and it works. Where are they going to go now with the Who Injured Jade storyline is the interesting thing.
Well, and that's where is Jade and what was her injury? Did she have a brain transplant? How long has she been out?
Nope, they only do that in Japan, apparently.
Well, the people have recovered from, goddamn limb amputations in less time.
Well, we'll find out, I assume soon. Apparently she's been training for her comeback, but that was WWE Raw in Cincinnati.
You know what they're starting to do now before they go out on television? All the wrestlers and the top athletes, the basketball players, the football players, the snowboarders, the ping pongers. You know what they're all doing, don't you?
I don't know what you're referring to, no.
They're taking a big shot of protein.
Oh.
It's all the people that have the active lifestyle and they go out and they move and they groove and they shuck and they jive and they just fight like big dogs. They all take care of their bodies. They need the nutritious stuff. They don't need the chemicals, the processed things of today, the sugars, the carbs. They don't need all that stuff. They need protein. Protein, and they can't just gnaw on lion flanks all day. So sometimes you have to take portable protein, Brian, protein that you can consume on the go. And that's like our Orgain 30-gram complete protein shakes. You don't have to go home to drink one of those. You can stick one in your pocket and pop the top on it at any time. You're out in the woods, you're out on the street, you're laying in the gutter, whatever your personal habits may be. You can drink one of these right out of your pocket. Boom. Chuck it down, 30 grams of protein. I think it's only 1 gram of sugar, almost negligible. And it helps you maintain a healthy lifestyle. When you're laying there drunk, spun out on crack, in a gutter somewhere with hooker's piss dribbling all around you, you still want to maintain a healthy lifestyle and keep your body in decent condition.
Why is there hooker piss all around you in the gutter? Is it from something you personally ordered, or is it just because it's the gutter and that's where they piss?
Well, most of the time when I'm laying in the gutter, that's kind of the ambiance that I've got around me. But you can still have one of these protein shakes. See, that's the thing. You can look good. It tastes amazing. Tastes like a chocolate milkshake without all of the things that are bad for you in the chocolate milkshake, like the sugar and they put pure cane sugar in a lot of these things, and your teeth immediately fall into powder and just fall down your throat. And it tears up your digestion. With Orgain, you'll poop better too. At least I do. It might be unrelated. And they've got protein powders and bars and shakes and other nutritional products that the whole family will love. If you take like a 6-month-old baby and take one of these protein bars and just go ahead and chew it up and just like the birds do, and just kind of chew it up in your mouth and then dribble it into the little baby's mouth. Well, that gets them started early on a healthy lifestyle.
No,
eating well.
I don't know who would advise that other than nobody.
Just rub their throat so it goes down better.
Listen, let's worry about yourself and worry about you, the adult listening to this, the adult who has a way of purchasing a fine source of protein that is delicious. You will enjoy it. It will taste like a chocolate milkshake, or maybe even better. Maybe you enjoy something better than that, and maybe this will be on par with that. You need to try it to find out. Jim, Orgain is great. It's protein. Tell him, Jim.
Yes, and apparently you need to be an adult, so just show your driver's license. Head right now to Orgain.com, Orgain, Orgain.com/Jim. Now you're going to have to show your driver's license or proof of age. This is like ordering porn through the mail. You got to be an adult. So, as a matter of fact, maybe a passport or some type of legal document. Like, do you have a deed to your home?
But listen, this is one of the wonderful things about Orgain. You don't need any of that. All you need to do is go to Orgain's website, use the promo code, and you can purchase a fine amount of protein that's delicious at a great fine price just for you, because you listen to this show and because we have a great relationship with Orgain that we're going to make sure we keep. Yes. Right, Jim?
Yes, it's a wonderful discount. You're going to 30% off is what you're going to get. 30% off. So let's say you order 10, you're going to get 3 for free. You're only going to pay for 7. As long as they don't catch you. This is something we've done. We've hacked their website.
No, we haven't hacked anything. Let's not joke about that. It's 30% off the price. No hacking.
Well, that's if you use the code Jim. See, they don't know about this. This is totally unsanctioned. We've just gotten into their back into their system.
No, we have
and
not.
We're offering our listeners this discount, Orgain.com/Jim, 30% off your order when you use the promo code Jim. But
you can't even get into your emails. You can't even get into your emails. You got into the back system. What are you talking about?
I had Hotchkiss do it. He's familiar with getting into people's back ends.
Once again, Orgain, they are our friends, and they are delicious friends. One more time, what's that promo code, Jim?
Orgain.com/Jim. Use the promo code Jim, 30% off your order. Helps with pooping. That could be totally coincidental. No, I'm not sure.
We can't make any kind of statement like that. That would go against the rules, but we could say that you will certainly poop if you are living, and why not have a poop with the remnants of the protein in your gut? Once again, Orgain, the best protein. It's delicious.
Well, we'd like to go now to remnants of a phone conversation that I had.
Without a phone. Earlier. It was amazing. It was like magic.
Yes, it was a phone conversation that I had earlier. On the phone with me right now, we got none other than, with Evan Husney, who is one of the creative forces behind Dark Side of the Ring on Vice. The new season is coming up Tuesday, March 25th at 10 p.m. Eastern. And we recorded this conversation, as I said, at an earlier time, discussing the various superstars and old friends that are going to be the topics of the season 6 episode. So, Brian, without further ado, would you like to take it over to my conversation with Evan Husney? All right, on the phone with me right now, one of the creative forces behind the hit series Dark Side of the Ring, Vice TV's top-rated program, along with his partner, Jason Eisner. They created this concept that has been widely imitated but never duplicated, and the new season starts on Tuesday, March 25th on Vice TV, and he's back again to talk about the new lineup, Evan Husney. Evan, good to have you back.
Hey, thanks, Jim. It's another year, another season, another podcast with you. Very happy to be back. Thanks so much.
Some more dark stories with light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes,
on a few of these.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been talking about the lineup, but we want to get from the horse's mouth. I'm sorry, Evan. No, you since you got your teeth fixed, that's no longer a problem. But we want to get direct from the source because, for example, I don't know if these are in order or not. As you can hear, I have my sheet with me. Mm-hmm. But when we were talking about this, I was talking with Brian on a recent show, and the Hell in a Cell episode came up. And obviously the Hell in a Cell, Mankind and Undertaker.
Right.
And I was trying to explain because he said, well, how can this be covered differently, than what's already been covered? And I was trying to explain, but you probably can better that this comes from trying to look inside the bizarre mind of our friend Mick, Mankind's mind. Say it better.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, one of the I guess from the beginning of this show, we worked with Mick Foley on our pilot episode, the Killing of Bruiser Brody episode. And I've always been fascinated by Mick. I mean, his sort of approach to wrestling, his craft, his philosophy that he brings to his style of performance is very unique. Obviously he's very committed to all the characters he plays, but he also subscribes to that sort of theater of pain style of performance art, if you will. That's that self-harm, self-sacrifice type of performance. And to me, it's always been fascinating anytime to hear him talk about, just how he sees that approach and his philosophy to that approach, and how he got himself over with that. I mean, obviously it's brutal to watch, and, you sympathize with him and what he's dealing with now. But for him, it was a way to connect with the audience. He sort of felt like it might have been difficult for him to connect in a different way. And this was his way to get that reaction from people, like that they had never seen, somebody take a flat back on the concrete, or, some other brutal thing that he does to himself, hard way stuff or whatever it is. That was his way to connect. And for him, it's this very deep sort of need to not acceptance, but, he always wants to make sure, the audience is getting their money's worth, and that he needs that love, from the audience. And this was, I think, from a very young age, something that he saw the power of having a kind of gross out, wild, weird sort of reaction out of people. And I think that's what his talents are, to do this. And so for me, it's like to look at it, or to use the Hell in the Cell match as sort of a microcosm of, his approach to wrestling, I think made a lot of sense, because it is the quintessential moment for Mick in a lot of ways. I mean, for people my generation, when I saw that live on pay-per-view as it was happening, I had never seen anything like that before, because
join the club.
Yeah, well, right. I mean, but it as an impressionable viewer, it transcended the idea of like a wrestling storyline, because now you have concern over the individual. This whole thing is this must be real, because it's not like, a part of the quote unquote script or whatever. And there's this like intense immediacy to it. And it was an incredible, indelible experience for me watching it. And I know a lot of people had the same reaction. And so to me, that's sort of like the perfect canvas, for him, for lack of a better term, to kind of craft, everything he had been trying to craft up until that point.
Well, that's the thing with Mick. And, I've told a story. I was there that night and astonished at what he put himself through. And we've told that story a bunch, but a lot of people, before I get to my main point, I'll say that the one thing that Mick had over everybody else that tries to do the same thing is that he still had the talent to somehow make it look uncooperative.
Right.
He didn't want to go along with this. He was, flung into it. But that's what got Mick over, got him noticed, got the attention. And I think I told you this one time we were speaking about him, is that after a couple of years and performances like this and some of the other things that he did during that, onset of the Attitude Era, at one point when he became Dude Love, because that story came up from another face of Foley from his, teenage years, Dude Love, the guy that dove off the roof.
Mm-hmm.
He felt like he was shortchanging the fans, because Dude Love was not the guy that took the big bumps or had the wild, bloody matches. He was the gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point, I had to tell him, I said, the reason why I think that the fans loved Mick on a personal basis is because he had that unique personality. They could identify with him.
100%.
And at first, the bumps got him noticed and the punishment got him noticed. But then as they started to like him more and more as a person rather than as an athlete or a celebrity or whatever, it made him uncomfortable. Yep. Instead of going, wow, they go like, oh, no, Mick, please. They felt like somebody was hurting their friend. And
right. Yep.
I think that's when he realized that it was the tail end of his career, that he could back up on that stuff and just be Mick, right?
Yeah, no, 100%. And obviously there is a darker side, if you will, to that, to the stuff he was doing in this time period. For example, obviously the effect it would have on his body, now, flashing forward to now and what he's going through, but also like what the episode gets into is his family. I mean, his wife, who he, they met very young, and she sort of understood his philosophy and what he was trying, these moments he was trying to make, through wrestling, and his plight, of wanting to be this very hardcore, believable wrestler. But then, of course, as you have a family and there's this escalating need to outdo yourself.
Yeah.
And this, the snowball effect, it has a, you have children now, mouths to feed, and you have a family, and they're kind of now tagging along on this ride, and that's difficult. And I think our episode definitely gets into the family side of having, a husband, a father like Mick, with, kind of wrestling with, the things that he wants to do and to achieve, but also at what risk, and so I think that's definitely part of it. But also it's scary in terms of what he has to live with now, in terms of what he's going through cognitively and the unknown of what's going to happen in 10 years from now, 15 years from now. And this sort of, it's for him, it's a mixed blessing, this match, because it's something that sort of made him the legend that he wanted to always become. But it also is something that he very narrowly escaped, some even worse consequences than he did, so. Yeah.
And who else is on this episode? I know I gave you some comments. I may end up on the cutting room floor, but
right.
You got some other interesting people.
Yeah. I think with this episode, we really wanted to try and live in the match as much as possible. So I think the amount of time we spend talking about the moment to moment in the match is actually longer than the match it is in actuality, which is always fun. I think that's very fun to watch. So we wanted to get a lot of people that were, there and covering it or involved in it in some way. So, so we got Gerald Briscoe in it, who's watching the monitors,
right,
and producing there. And from his perspective, we did get Dr. Francois Petit, who makes a run in the episode, who's an incredible character. And he's awesome.
Is it Mick, his body is like a whale. It is just, he has no bone structure. You can just move him around.
Yeah, right. Let me fix you, baby. But he's great, and he gives a great perspective in terms of, calling Mick like, his greatest patient in many ways, of the types of stuff he's had to do to reset him and, throughout the years. But it's cool to hear from him. I mean, I had no idea he was Sub-Zero in the Mortal Kombat movie. I did not know that.
I didn't either.
I did not know that.
I thought he was just the guy that did handstands on the boys' backs.
No, he's in the movie. And so he gives a very unique, perspective. Of course, Mick's family is in there, his wife, Colette, Noelle, his daughter, and Mickey, his son. Jimmy Corderas is in the episode as well. Al Snow, who sort of took care of Mick that night, trying to get him, giving him all the help he could get to get into bed and all that stuff. It's pretty brutal. Jim Ross returns for it, of course, on color commentary, yourself. And yeah, I think that's everybody.
Is that the season premiere? I don't know if my list is in order.
Yes.
That is. So on March 25th, we're going to take the ride on the Hell in a Cell train.
Yes.
But
right.
Following that, another episode that I shot some comments for, and that I was peripherally involved in the man's career. That was his only run where he wasn't as successful as he was everywhere else. Vader gets an episode this season.
That's right. Yeah, very excited about that. Just one of my favorites, again, from childhood, in terms of that, super heavyweight, big man, strong man character. Always a huge fan of his stuff in Japan with that crazy mask, with the steam coming out of it. Yeah. Incredible. It's incredible stuff. So, yeah, this episode is, again, very family based as well. His ex-wife is in there, his son, and they're tremendous in the episode. The story covers a lot of the development of, you know, his incredibly stiff strongman style, and also contrasting his very emotional volatility at times. You know, he sort of had that. He had that, and you know, how he broke into the business. I think he broke in with Brody and Stan in the same locker room, you know, and they sort of kind of beat the shit out of him and kind of showed him what it was all about. You know, obviously he comes from the Hard Knocks football background, of course, too. But you can see the development of that and how he came in, and then, you know, he was chosen for that big Van Vader gimmick in Japan, and so the sort of, you know, the creation of that, you know, monster character. And yeah, as I said, it dives into the dichotomy, you know, of his intense performance and his intense physicality, and just somebody who really had a, you know, very sensitive and volatile inner side. It gets into
he could swing from a wrecking ball to you know, a teddy bear in like the twinkling of an eye, right?
Yes, and I think one moment that really illustrates that is the incident that occurred with Joe Thurman. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, the power bomb gone somewhat awry.
Yeah. So Joe's in the episode, which is interesting, and I don't think he's really ever talked much about that incident. But you know, he describes basically, you know, Vader, I don't know, a switch went off and he saw red and just became this vicious monster when the bell rang. And then, you know, following what was pretty much like a temporary paralysis moment that, you know, what happened to Joe after you see that, you know, the moves he took and how kind of careless Vader was in the ring with him, that he instantly was just like an emotional wreck after that, you know, Vader was, in terms of what he had done to somebody else, you know. So that is kind of part of his emotional makeup, if you will, you know.
And part of it, I've talked about, you know, the biggest comment I always have is Vince never got Leon.
Yes.
Vince never got Leon, and Leon didn't get Vince.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, part of it may have been because, I mean, other pro football players have made the successful transition,
right?
You know, whether they played for just a few years or a number of years in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
But Leon just always had that football mentality of, here's how I should be treated, and here's that blah, 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 standing up. And I guess they have a union over there in football. And it worked for him when he was taking care of himself in the Wild West, like Brody did in Japan, or, you know, in Mexico or whatever. But when he got into the Vince environment, Leon hadn't been a lifelong wrestling fan, got into business late. Vince saw a whole different person. He had never seen the Vader that everybody else in the world knew because he wasn't watching.
Right.
And it didn't connect. That was, and I get the opportunity to manage Vader, the only place that he ever wrestled after his rookie year where he wasn't the world champion. But go on, Evan.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, you mentioned in the episode about how Vince didn't have much of a frame of reference for him. And so it was kind of this idea, you know, I mean, you have to know how to position somebody like that, you know, when you're given a monster heel like that, a one of a kind one, especially. And it seemed like it never really connected. Obviously, he was pretty banged up at that time, too, I think. And so he was slowing down a bit, and his weight was getting heavier. And, you know, JR talks about this.
The weight clause.
The weight clause, right. And JR's kind of response.
Steen in Ring of Honor was pissed off. I said, just lose 40 pounds for your health and performance sake, right? I said, do we have to put a weight clause in your contract? He's like, what the fuck? I said, hey, if Vince can do it to Vader, we can do it to you.
Right. Yeah. And you kind of get a peek into just the talent management side of things, you know, through JR, who kind of has to deal with trying to get Vader, you know, healthier. And I think he enrolled Vader and Yokozuna into this kind of university program that had a weight loss.
Duke.
Duke, right.
They didn't go at the same time because I was monitoring Yoko when he was there. I've told that story, but I want to say, I don't know that Leon ever actually went. I
really?
think they wanted to. I don't know. Now, JR may have a firmer memory, but I think they wanted him to, and somehow he avoided it, but he might have gone. There was talk of it.
Yeah, I think JR mentioned, maybe he's conflating the stories or whatnot, but he was mentioning how, like, he found out, I wasn't sure if this was Yoko or Vader, both, whatever, that, he found out that somebody was smuggling in fried chicken.
And that was Yoko.
Got it, right. Yeah,
that was Yoko. He had actually, that was the joke in the office. We sent Yokozuna to the Duke weight loss clinic and he ate it.
Right.
But anyway, back to Leon, though. Yeah. That's another episode this season. And again, I've mentioned this before, but I love the subjects that you guys have the opportunity to cover. Now that the first couple of seasons, we got to have the big names, right? Because you're proving yourself. But now that you got the track record and you blow all the competition away, you can go into some of the things, because when has Vader ever really been featured? Any Vader footage or whatever by any of the WWE authorized programming? And a lot of your guys fit or your episodes, I should say, fit that picture, including the next episode on a guy who the WWE has definitely featured him in the past, but he had a career outside that for a long period of time, and a few interesting stories. Mr. USA Tony Atlas.
Yes. Yep.
And now Tony's still alive and kicking and around with us, so the story isn't all that dark and gloomy, but he's gone through some shit in his career, to say the least.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, Tony says, Hogan had told him once that, he's one of the only wrestlers he had seen that had worked his way from the top to the bottom, that is,
I don't know. I've known a few of those also.
I'm sure there's a few others. Yeah. But he, that is kind of his story. I mean, Tony's autobiography is, too much too soon is what he calls it. And he kind of came in with this incredible body. He was a bodybuilder turned wrestler, and came in with this amazing physique, and was given a lot of opportunities out of the gate. And again, he just kind of had this emotional volatility. And of course, it's like sort of obligatory mention of, his shoe fetish, which, is actually according to Tony, like a bigger, it played a bigger part into his career trajectory than I would have thought. He talks about, for those who don't know, I mean, Tony, likes to be walked on quite often by women wearing, platform shoes.
But not promoters. Promoters can't walk on it, but the women wearing the big shoes.
Yeah, I've seen it firsthand before, many times.
Or first foot.
First foot, exactly. Excuse me. But it's something, as he says in the episode, like, he would no-show events out of the temptation of an opportunity to get walked on, and that was sort of his happy place, his place of, that's how he de-stresses, and so that played a big part into him missing a lot of opportunities, according to himself.
Well, and also, for people who might not be familiar because they see his body, but they think, Superstar Graham and those other bodybuilders at the time, they, were California and they're on Muscle Beach. Tony White is his real name. And he grew up outside of Roanoke, Virginia, in a little small town and dirt poor. And he managed to build that body and that reputation and start winning teenage contests with nothing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, genetically, obviously he was gifted, but just the work that he put into that. And that's what led the promoters to notice him.
Yep.
And he broke in there in the Carolinas of the 1970s. Everybody knows that was the place where every major NWA talent and every top in-ring worker and a blah, 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 they were flocking there. Mm-hmm. So he got in with, he's working with Ric Flair and Andre the Giant, people like this in his rookie year. He had a lot of people there to teach him. I have some of the films and have seen saw him early on, it was rough at the start, but he had an amazing athleticism for a guy that size.
Yeah.
But the point is, too much too soon. A guy that goes from, lifting paint cans on a broomstick or whatever because he can't even afford barbells. And suddenly those guys on top of the Carolinas in the 70s were making a couple or $3,000 a week.
Exactly.
That's boom. Then that goes. And I'll pitch it back to you with this classic story. His rookie year, he's in the locker room in the Carolinas. And somebody looks over and sees Tony, and he's got a bottle of baby oil, and he's pouring the whole goddamn bottle of baby oil over all around his head, his neck, and his shoulders, his chest. And they said, "What are you doing?" And his accent like that, we talk like that because he's that Virginia. He said, "They tell me I got to shine tonight because old man Crockett's here."
Oh man.
So it was a learning experience there.
Right.
Very, very, a lot very soon, but go ahead.
Well, as you were saying, I mean, he came, from this upbringing, that he had, and, he was a fighter, having to, he got into a lot of fights as a kid, and he came from, not a great section of town, and, he had a lot to prove. And I think that coming from, his sort of socioeconomic background and then coming into the wrestling business and making all of this money very quickly and not really knowing, how to save or, what he should do with it. I mean, he was just that money came in and went immediately out, and I think that's obviously he's not the only wrestler who had that sort of issue, but
right.
I think that was a big part of it. And, for him though, this episode definitely also gets into, he also struggled with addiction. And he had kind of a downward spiral, and his career, fizzled out, and he became homeless, and he was living on the street for periods of time. And then he met his wife, who basically essentially saved him, from living on the streets and brought him in and took care of him. Vince called him back and had brought him back as Saba Simba, and he had that experience of kind of seeing the bottom, and what's kind of heartwarming to see, and not to spoil it or anything, but his wife has suffered a stroke, I think, in the last few years, and he's been taking care of her like day in and day out. And so to see that just the relationship that they still have to this day is very moving. And so that's something people will see, which is cool.
Well, then an inspirational in some ways story like Tony Atlas. Then you go to the other side of the coin with. And he may be a blip on a lot of wrestling fans' screens, especially in America. They might remember him a bit in Japan. But the guy whose real name was Tony Halm, but they may know him as Ludvig Borga. You told me you were going to do an episode. I said, what was he, a wrestler for 15 minutes? I mean, I forgot that I had managed him. Remember that? You had to remind me I managed him the once, right?
Right.
And he was just a quiet guy sat in the corner with the weird look, and he had the, and I guess he was that generation's Gunther, except he couldn't work and he couldn't talk. But Vince loved that, U-boat captain look. But now that you have done the episode and you told me some of the stuff that this guy was into away from wrestling.
Yeah.
This is just one of those ones. It's a heck of a story. This guy was shady in a number of areas.
Yeah. It is a wild story, and one that I can't believe we didn't do sooner. It's been one that a lot of people have recommended to me, and we would look into it and try and, I just can't believe we didn't pull the trigger on it sooner. But he basically, Ludvig Borga, I mean, I think he was in the WWF for a year, maybe at the most.
I think they probably signed him for a year, and that's when he left, when it was up.
Yeah, right. And so, fans might remember him. He does have a Hasbro action figure. I think it's one of the more valuable ones too, as a frame of reference. But basically,
most of the run ended up in a landfill, probably. So the ones remaining are very valuable.
Right, exactly. But yeah, he was booked as a Finnish heel, a heel from Finland, the Hellraiser from Helsinki. What you say in the episode, Vince will, if we don't have an issue with a country, Vince will find one, and
those goddamn Finns, they stabbed us in the back again.
Right. But one of the big moments with him in the WWF behind the scenes is they all figured out that he had an SS tattoo. He had a Nazi SS tattoo on his calf, and that was quite alarming to a lot of folks. And I think it was, okay, we didn't know this. We didn't do the background check on him. And I think it was about
when they do the background check, does it include a list of your tattoos?
Yeah, a cavity search.
Yeah, but that's what I was trying to remember when we were talking about this last week. And then one of the listeners, goddamn, how old am I?
The readers.
One of the listeners sent a picture on Twitter. I was reading on Twitter, and it's what I was doing. And the listener sent the picture.
Right.
And it was, the SS lightning bolt thing with the eagle around it and everything, like you would see on Herman Goering or whatever.
Right.
And where is Finland in relation to Germany? I don't mean to derail your story, but
I don't know. It's somewhere around there, isn't it?
Somewhere in the area, I guess. Maybe,
Yeah.
But nevertheless, first they saw the tattoo and they're like, no, we got to cover that up.
Yep. And I think any kind of reason at that point to get rid of him, because he also was just very, he wasn't easy to get along with. He was confrontational, cantankerous. He didn't have a very good reputation among the boys. And then, for many, that's kind of where his story stops and starts, but for our episode, it was looking, we actually partnered up with a documentary crew in Finland who had done a story on Tony Halme over there, because he's a much more infamous person, obviously in his home country. He's everybody knows who he is, kind of thing.
And apparently they're not real warm on him either.
No, they're not. But there was a time where they were. He comes from Finland. His sort of background is, he grew up as a very bitter and full of resentment kid, and joined gangs and, was kind of violent in the streets, beating people up sort of thing, very confrontational kind of guy. And he, you'll love this. His inspiration for wanting to come to America, the person that inspired him to want to be a celebrity was Travis Bickle from Taxi Driver. when he saw
are you talking to me?
Yeah, right, exactly. So he saw something in Taxi Driver that made him want to move to America. So he moved to America, went to the Gold's Gym sort of route and met people there and were like, hey, you'd be good for wrestling. You got the body and the whole thing. And so he actually wound up wrestling in Herb Abrams' UWF first, I believe. So he was the Viking for all the Herb Abrams fans out there. And then, he got WWF and all that. But when he was let go, he went back to Finland sort of in pursuit of, local stardom and did a number of things. He became like they have like their whole equivalent to the American gladiators, and so he was a gladiator. And then he made his own, I think he recorded his own album. It's terrible.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah, he was trying to become famous, and he basically, I think he wrote an autobiography, which most of it is like obviously fabricated, but he would say these very controversial, racist, divisive rhetoric stuff that he was starting to put out into the media and on television appearances, and it gained a lot of traction for being very controversial. And then there were politicians at the time who were part of, you could say, the sort of Nazi-ish party in Finland. There was a growing, anti-immigration sentiment going on in Finland, and they saw an opportunity to have someone.
Wait a minute. You mean all this shit's happened before in Finland? Go ahead.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, the parallels are pretty uncanny, actually. That's one of the most illuminating things, is how prescient this story is. But anyway, and basically they brought him into politics as someone who would run for parliament, and he was with that sort of the sort of troublemaker party, and lo and behold, he won in a landslide victory. He's actually one of the most, I think he's still, looking back into like the Finnish electoral history, he's one of the people that's been voted for like the most out of anybody. Yeah. And so he came into power.
Mass hysteria gripped Finland,
yes.
And Ludvig Borga,
yes,
was elected to what was his title or office?
Parliament. Well, I don't know exactly how it works over there, but it's like
a parliamentarian
or whatever it is. But he He, yeah. And things didn't work out well for him. The hubris, the ego, out of control, drugs, trying to keep up the body, and everything. And then it obviously ends in a very grim ending for himself there. But it's a fascinating story. It's not so much a wrestling story, but it is, because wrestling and politics are so linked in a lot of ways. And I think it's I think it's one of the more fascinating episodes we've done, actually. And just looking at, his trajectory after his career in wrestling and the parallels that are there. So yeah, it's definitely one of the ones to not miss.
Well, and another one of the ones that I know that our listeners and, well, anybody who's followed this fellow's story over the last few years is not going to want to miss. We get all kinds of people always asking us about what's going on with Billy Jack Haynes. And now we're going to find out on TV on Vice with Dark Side of the Ring. Billy, and you've got a number of illuminating talking heads in this one too.
Yeah, Billy Jack Haynes, man. It's funny, like when we started, I think maybe season 2 or 3, somewhere in there, we were always oddly compelled and fascinated by his shoot interviews because they were so wildly crazy, and the things that he would, espouse, and the sort of conspiracies he would put out there, and just
confess to even.
Right. And putting himself at the center of certain things, and his look. Just, you can't ignore how he looked in those interviews, with the hair and the scars and everything. It was such a wild look. But I think it was, I'm trying to remember the chain of events, but I think it was when we were doing the Tales from the Territories show. We were doing a Portland episode, and we reached out to him to be a part of that. It didn't quite work out, but I believe at some point he reached out to us, I think after, the alleged homicide that's happened now that people I'm sure are aware of, about him telling us about him wanting to tell his story on our show. So it was this kind of wild thing where he came to us and wanting to talk for this show. So then that was obviously very compelling to us given everything that's going on. But as we know, this has not gone to trial yet. So there is a limit to the things in that he can talk about specifically, but we were able to essentially arrange, or a interview with him behind bars, which was wild. So this is our first sort of prison interview that we've done on the show.
You knew when you got into the television business, it was going to take you places.
I guess that's a bucket list thing. I don't know, but it was fascinating. And, with Billy Jack Haynes
in the same month, you went to my house and prison.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It happened.
But that's the thing, is that
sometimes I go from Vince Russo's living room to then your living room.
Now wait a minute. If you didn't tell me that, or I would have had a decontaminator here with the fog you down, for heaven's sake. Now
that's happened once or twice before.
From now on, I'm going to make you strip naked and put a hazmat suit on when you come in. But no, the question, the question here, that everybody who had ever known Billy Jack or been around Billy Jack, just, way back in the day, or be even a fan of Billy Jack, watch him on TV, and then would see that gray-haired, beetle haircutted, Muppet-looking character it just be a raving batshit fucking crazy as a rainbow trout in a car wash.
Yeah.
Everybody, the question was, what the fuck happened to Billy Jack Haynes, and when did this take place? Accident, brain injury, safe fall on his head?
Yeah.
What insight were you able to derive from what the fuck happened to Billy Jack Haynes?
Well, one of the just difficult / frustrating aspects of his story is trying to get to the truth. There's so much of not knowing what's true. You go down one path, sort of, realizing, oh, this is a bunch of bullshit. It's a bunch of, this is totally untrue. And then you talk to somebody else that, no, actually he did have connections to the world of underground criminal activity, and there is someone who can speak factually about that, so So it is, this episode does remind me in a lot of ways of our Marty Jannetty episode from season 4, in that I think, I don't know, this is maybe my personal opinion, but it's like for Billy Jack to kind of I think he also had a pretty quick rise to success, out of the gate.
Oh yeah.
And was put in that position. And I'm sure that was a difficult thing for him to walk away from, just in terms of that adulation, the spotlight, whatever, celebrity, whatever. And
it wasn't hard for him to walk out on a promoter, though.
That's true. Right. Of course. Yeah. But I think it's like that idea of still trying to remain relevant and still trying to insert yourself into the headlines and maintaining that. And I think for him, that is, something that he would do with his provocative interviews and the things he would come out and say, to get that attention. But yeah, I also think there's, a lot of people that we interviewed talk about his sort of manipulative side, that he had a kind of, he was very manipulative to a lot of people in terms of getting what he wanted and what he wanted people to do and say and think. And he could be a very violent person as well. So this episode is kind of our journey into trying to answer that question, and to try to figure out like what life events, what things have happened to shape this person into this unspeakable, unthinkable crime that has taken place. And to try to put that all together, but also separating fact from fiction, because so much of his story is unknown to a lot of people, even in the industry who knew him. Like what's true and what's not, so it is kind of, I would say it's similar to the Marty Jannetty story in that way.
Well, that's the 1985 Billy Jack. I can see being a guy who could talk you into things, and the look of him and the body and he had a tone to his voice, and he could manipulate somebody to doing something. I can't see the 2020 version of Billy Jack Haynes being to talk somebody into spitting on the sidewalk.
Well, maybe not 2020, but when I can't remember what year, maybe it was 2018, I think, when he did come out with the Boys on the Track story, this.
Yeah. Did he ever give you any type of indication that even he knew, even if he was trying to make you believe something, that he knew that he comes off like a raving fucking lunatic? Is he aware of that and trying to just steamroller through it? Or does he think that people are looking at him like that he doesn't have steaming turds hanging out of his mouth?
Well, my point is, though, that the families of the victims of that Boys on the Track story, for those who don't know, it was this story. I think it happened I want to say it was the 80s. Yeah, it was the 80s, I think. When he was
West Memphis, Arkansas.
Exactly, where there was a drug deal that went wrong, and these kids were biking by and they saw it, and then Billy Jack alleges that him and his accomplices tied them to the tracks, and they were found dead on train tracks. And it was a big news story at the time. And but Billy Jack came out, I think in the late 2010s, with the story, like coming out, taking responsibility that I was there and I was part of this. It's tied to the Clintons, it's tied.
Because the drug deal was supposedly orchestrated by Bill Clinton.
Oh yeah, he got phone calls directly from Bill. Kill the kids, or whatever. I'm paraphrasing. But basically, yeah. So, but like he did insert himself with the real victims' families. So he was communicating with the victims' families and getting them to believe he was there and part of it.
And also, and wasn't his story why were you there? If this was some kind of drug deal, it was supposed to be done in the dark in West Memphis, Arkansas, on a train tracks. You're a television star. He said he was wearing a wrestling mask and he was there to shoot video.
Yep.
So they'd have proof in case anything went wrong or what. What the fuck? So nobody's going to notice this giant man in a fucking lucha mask with a camcorder attending this goddamn drug summit here. I'm sorry. I just get outraged at least come up with a good fucking story. But, and then wasn't there someone Now with the modern research, the date that the murder happened, he was booked to wrestle in fucking Rhode Island or some shit.
I think so. Something like that. Yeah. So, yeah, but then like you hear that story, and then as preposterous as it sounds, right, which it is, but you then hear a story with photographic evidence of him getting involved in, local mob types in Portland, who had financed his. You remember when he tried to go up against Don Owens up there, his own promotion, and apparently the money from that was kind of sketch, and he was like beaten up like to like an inch of his life or something. And there's a journalist that's in the episode who talks about that and was also just fascinated by Billy Jack in terms of trying to separate fact from fiction. But here's these pictures of him, being beaten in the hospital, for his connection to organized crime. So it's like there is some connection that he has.
Well, maybe if he wouldn't go screaming from the rooftops every crook that he works for, they wouldn't keep beating him up.
I guess so.
Loose lips sink ships.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, another episode though, unfortunately the subject is not here to be a part of it, but one of the more interesting stories I think that hasn't been told on any type of television, the WWE programs obviously, but something that's long overdue, a look into Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert.
Yes.
And, this is a guy who unfortunately gets no national television today in any of these retrospectives or documentaries because he was instrumental in a lot of places with a lot of talent behind the scenes and did a lot of great work, but was in a lot of cases in the wrong place, the wrong time for the eventual winners of all the promotional wars and the libraries that are out there now. And he didn't get to, experience the attitude era that almost everything comes from. But a little bit about the Eddie Gilbert episode from your.
Yeah, definitely a passion project, for our team, something we've always wanted to do. And I'm so glad we did. Eddie Gilbert, one of the great minds of wrestling. And as you were saying, kind of sadly a forgotten figure to a lot of modern fans. And, because he did kind of predate the internet age in a lot of ways. And he died kind of before, like the Monday Night Wars. Like, I kind of think like what he would have been like during, I don't know, like WCW Nitro or something, like what kind of role he might have played in that, maybe as a kind of wild Brian Pillman-esque sort of character or something.
Yeah.
So this is a big time what if story, I think is what I would frame it. But yeah, he had a debilitating car accident early on in his career that he always suffered the repercussions of, the injuries he had from that. Coincidentally was the same night as the Snuka Nancy Argentino situation, that car accident. Yeah, and so for him, it was kind of dealing with that pain, dealing with that kind of inherent paranoia that comes with the wrestling industry, being kind of a smaller size guy in a big man's world, and really his love of the business and his desire to really be the booker. I think that was always his dream, was to be somebody who was booking the matches and had a really forward-thinking mind for that. That sort of be the template for the future. Paul Heyman talks a lot about, Eddie being an early in, of course, ECW there and what an influence he had on him. And
well, Paul, in Paul's autobiography, did he mention Eddie's name? He said, a friend of mine asked me to, and that was boom.
There you go.
But, but if you catch him off camera when he can be honest, he owes a lot to Eddie. And Eddie was the first one to see Sting in Mid-South before he came to Crockett as a guy that they needed to feature. And you and I talked about for the episode that was the thing. Eddie wanted to be the booker. Eddie, he grew up, he idolized his father, Tommy, who was a fantastic worker. Not the flashy modern kind of baby face, but the Southern baby face that just everything he did looked good and made sense and he could sell and blah, blah, blah. But Eddie wanted to be his father. He wanted to be Jerry the King Lawler because that's the guy he grew up watching, and the promo style, because that was not Tommy's thing, was promos. And he wanted to be the booker because he was fascinated by it, and he had stood there and stared at Jerry Jarrett with moon eyes like we all did. You know, Jerry Jarrett is the god of wrestling. and that's what drove him. But at the same time, whereas people think that I am a bit impetuous, or used to be at least back in the day, as far as telling somebody off or saying fuck this or whatever. Eddie, I had a longer fuse than Eddie did. Eddie, if he would get in a sideways with somebody about something, generally about his booking or the booking or something related to business, and boom, he's gone. He was out of Memphis 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 times maybe, and back over a number of years. And I think that's what kept him, maybe if he'd lived to the Attitude Era.
Oh yeah.
He would not have been featured as a wrestler as much as maybe a Roddy Piper style player coach.
Yep.
And behind the scenes, he would have been in some type of producer or creative role if he could have existed by being a cog in the machine rather than because there wasn't any the booker by the late 90s.
Yeah.
But that's where he would have, everybody would have been trying to draw on his he had a feel for the business because he'd watched it since he grew up and he understood it. It just sometimes he didn't understand how to be the businessman, even though he understood the business.
Exactly. And I think and what's also fascinating, historically about him too, is that he sort of he did one of the first shoot interviews ever, kind of getting into the inner workings of the business, which I think came as somewhat of a surprise coming from someone like him who is so dedicated to, protecting wrestling and the secrets and so forth. But he did one of the first shoot interviews, which is very is interesting.
Well, and I can tell you that because we talk about it in the episode. Eddie and I were the same age, a month apart in age, and I'd known him since we were 15 years old. And he, we were pen pals back in the day when people did that stuff. He'd send me, a picture or a letter. Hey, I'm working for Vince now up in the WWF, whatever. But concurrently with what was going on the last couple of years of Eddie's life, me and Paul and Eddie were the same age, basically.
Yep.
And where I'd just been on the creative team in WCW, and now I'm doing Smoky Mountain. And Eddie has been booking and working in Memphis. And then he had just come off booking Continental, where he got Paul a spot also. They've both gone to Philadelphia, and Paul has stayed. Eddie's come back. The point is, we understood that there was a subculture of wrestling fans that were smart, and the epicenter was probably Philadelphia. And there might be 3 of them in Evansville, Indiana, or there might be 26 in fucking Indianapolis. But it was a small market, and there was an individual way to reach those people, those early shoot interviews. Eddie decided to do it before I did. But at the same time, Eddie was campaigning at that point because he was kind of looking to be recognized, which that audience did. So that, somebody higher up on the food chain might say, well, let's give this guy a job. But it wasn't like in those days, it was a trickle theory. It wasn't like you were exposing the business to the outer world. You were exposing the business to the people that it was already exposed to.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
That were hungry to find out more, and they were the ones coming to, unfortunately, in Eddie's position in Philadelphia, that's the audience that was coming to his matches almost exclusively. So to reach that audience, you had to do something like that. Paul did it in different ways, and he was trying to hook into the grunge culture up there, which turns out there was more of them than there was the hardcore fans at that point. And And I was, doing the approach of we're down here at a wrestling school. So you have to, in OVW in those years, the late 90s and the video era, you have to kind of acknowledge what's going on in wrestling because people know it's a wrestling school, but you create your own conflicts in that universe.
Mm-hmm.
Blah, blah, blah. But anyway.
That's spot on.
Yeah, who's on the Eddie episode?
The Eddie episode, I have that right here. Oh, well, you're in it.
Well, I mean, once you've got past the star of the show, but I mean, I have a supporting cast.
His brother Doug is in the episode, of course. Ricky Morton is in the episode. I think it might be the first time he's been on Dark Side, and he's fantastic.
I think you're right. Oh, Ricky is fucking hilarious.
Yeah, it's like, why hasn't he been on every episode before that? He's great. He was really good. We have a childhood friend, Darla Staggs, in there. Dutch Mantell is in the episode. Todd Gordon is in the episode. Medusa's in the episode, and I think that might be it.
And also, I knew Darla Staggs. We were pen pals.
Okay, cool.
Because she was part of the WFIA. I mean, we didn't write constantly. I mean, she was too sexy for me at that time. But but no, she was one of the 70s WFIA era fans. And Eddie, actually, I gave you some pictures that might make the cut of Eddie and Tommy being speaking at the WFIA convention when Tommy had gotten an award. Eddie was still a photographer. So this is kind of this all started, Eddie's story started in Memphis at the same time that I was growing up. We were on opposite ends of the territory. So a lot of this stuff it's nice to see getting a spot on television, childhood memories.
Yes. Yeah. It's good.
And there's another guy that I've been lobbying for a while. You did the Graham family, but the stories were so that tree branches all over the place. It's like a dogwood. The stories were so mixed and intertwined, and then went in separate directions that you focused on Eddie and Mike Graham and their side of the family. But now that's rectified. This season, superstar Billy Graham gets his own episode of Dark Side of the Ring.
That's right. And there was thought, when we did the Graham family episode in season 4, that we would try to, it seems like an absurd task now, but in hindsight, but trying to work in more of Billy Graham's story into that. But of course, him not being, as close to the Graham family sort of gimmick as much as the others were. But
and also on a timely, because again, you had to talk about Dr. Jerry and Eddie and Mike, and their family story was as interesting as the in-ring part of their lives. So, but superstar Graham, because my God, at one time, the biggest box office attraction in the business by virtue of being the WWF champion and selling out Madison Square Garden. Like, people were there to get a cure for the plague. They were beating the doors down.
Yeah.
And then the dark side of that is that he went from the biggest star in the business to hiding in his house in depression.
Yeah.
In like the space of 12 months. And then his career never recovered. Certainly everybody can agree on that. His legacy endured, but the rest of his in-ring wrestling career was at best and sad in some cases.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. This episode is, this is great. I'm really happy with how this episode's shaped up. It's very moving. It is, I would say, ostensibly mostly a family story, almost more than anything else. Of course, we interviewed his wife, Valerie, his son, Joey, and his daughter, Capella. And I mean, tracking his career, obviously, as you said, he was the original kind of superstar wrestler, the one that so many imitated. And he was such a blueprint for what would come next in a lot of ways. The episode tracks, his origins, coming from the ministry, being a preacher, ripping phone books, bending steel bars, during,
typical preacher.
Typical preacher shit. And really developing that promo style, during that, of course, obviously taking the name Billy Graham, which from the real Billy Graham. But for him, like the big moment is centering on getting the championship, right, from Vince Sr., having the belt, but knowing that the day was going to be coming where he had to drop it to Bob Backlund. And he thought that at some point, just by his own pure charisma, sheer will, that he could change Vince Sr.'s mind and see that we should be going this direction with, what I'm doing and as the champion in the company. And maybe we don't need to go with this Bob Backlund plan, And I think him not being able to prove himself in that way to Vince Sr., that he could be that person and should always be that person in that moment, and basically continuing to be the person who's drawing the houses and going to the next level. I think that was an extremely difficult thing for him to overcome. And that was sort of, as a lot of people in the episode talk about, the sort of beginning of the end with him in terms of the effect it had on him psychologically, whether that's from childhood and a relationship to his own father and, sort of trying to prove himself in that capacity. Because, there are voices in the episode like Steve Kern, who's like, kind of saying, well, it's just a belt, you're a mark, and don't lose sight of the money and, stuff like that. And for others, especially his family.
Well, but now, to be honest, the belt, if you got the belt, you get more money.
Exactly.
He had both. He had the adulation. He had
Yes.
He was a hero in New York City. He was the first cool heel they'd really ever had. Maybe the Valiant Brothers, but they didn't get over like this.
Right.
And, he had everything. That's why people thought that Vince Sr. was nuts for taking the belt off of him. And at the time, and, I always, in hindsight, looked at how in the world did they not somehow manage to switch him babyface at the same time and go with the flow? But when Vince wanted to keep up with his plan, and he had no idea that he was, employing this legendary figure. This was the guy he chose to be the heel transition champion.
Yep.
And they were selling out everywhere anyway, but Superstar was selling out fucking everything.
Yep. Yeah. And of course, he, it also tracks kind of, he went through so many medical issues, I think as a result of a lot of the steroid abuse that he had done to his body over the years.
Oh, and especially that era of steroids where they were mixing it up in a bathtub, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And just, going through that, and having a very sort of fractured relationship with his children and how their children, and basically like how his kids came to reckon with that, is very moving in the episode. There's one thing I didn't know that I had never seen before, but I guess at some point, I think in the 90s, Billy Graham put on this like stage production play that was this autobiographical theater production that is very abstract. Like I think it takes place all in a wrestling ring, but it's like the story of his life and like drug abuse and all this stuff, and Jake Roberts plays him in this theatrical production.
Oh, good Lord. Wait, what? Hold on, back up. Pump the brakes.
Have you not seen this?
No, Jake Roberts plays Superstar Billy Graham.
Well, I don't know if it's supposed to be like him exactly.
I was going to say, is he hitting the double bicep, Jake?
No. I think he's just kind of playing an archetypal version of him.
Okay, so it's not like that. It's actually
no, it's not exact.
Appear like, I can't think of people who look less similar to you.
No, but you see footage of it in the episode, and it's just like, wow, I had no idea that was a real thing.
Whew. But we are going to get to see the Superstar Billy Graham story.
Yes,
on this season, and. And that's the thing is he lost the belt to Backlund in what was it, February of '78? Am I remembering that right?
I think that sounds right.
And then he's out of the wrestling business for a while. Gorilla Monsoon reported him dead, and
yes,
he shows up in the Memphis territory in I guess it was probably October-ish, September, October-ish. Jarrett wanted to establish the CWA world title because everybody else was, being stingy with their world champions. And so to get a championship level star to carry the thing, I don't know. And I never thought to ask Jerry Jarrett now how the fuck he booked superstar Billy Graham or how that came to be.
Mm-hmm.
But here was the guy that was selling out Madison Square Garden, was one of the highest paid wrestlers in the world a year before that. And he's working in Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
And he had lost he looked like a 40-year-old ex-bodybuilder. And
yeah.
And he didn't have the history behind him. And he could still talk, but the people are like, because it's the first time they'd ever seen him in person.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't exactly busting his ass to, fucking get over like a young lion at that point. And it just didn't work as far as him selling any tickets. But I was thinking, how the fuck?
Yeah.
He couldn't even go back to work for Vern. He was a huge star for Vern in 72. But it was sad that between the depression and the substances and whatever, that, that was pretty much, by the time he got back to work for Vince, his body had betrayed him.
Yeah. And then when he came back to the WWF, he also had, the karate character, which is painful to see. I think his family too is like that. That was the hardest time to watch him, was during that period when he was in that character, because you could really see that like he's on pills during all that, and it's really tough.
Well, there's another one this season that's a tough story, and again, one that doesn't get any mention on national television these days or in any of the widely seen retrospectives. But she was well known for a variety of promotions for several years, and then unfortunately her career kind of went the way of some. Daphne.
Yes.
And Daphne was out of wrestling, I guess sometime, I've lost track, sometime before her passing.
Mm-hmm.
But she was just, one of those girls that, I think, how big a turning point was it? The turning point was her injury from that goofy bump in TNA, and
right.
And it screwing up a variety of things in her body.
Well, I can't remember exactly what year the TNA spot was, but that definitely that injury was a huge part of her in terms of her like her downfall in a lot of ways, that injury. And she tried, I think, to sue the company at that time for what had happened, but they settled, which is just so shocking. They settled with her, and I think just gave her like 1,000 of her action figures as payment.
What?
Yeah. It's something I did not know. And it's just like, oh my God. So like, that's what she got as like her settlement out of that whole situation.
So, and it was, for the folks who don't know, and I don't remember the specific details, but it was some kind of goofy furniture, weapons, no DQ match where she somehow got choke slammed off a ladder through a table or some shit or other.
To the outside, yeah,
to the floor, and fucked herself up in a variety of ways, and was trying to get TNA to pay for her medical bills.
Exactly.
At one point they said they would do, and then apparently forgot that they said that. And
and she had a garage full of action figures for it, which is just crazy. But she's I'm so glad we did this episode too. We got a lot of voices, from sort of the inner circle, if you will, the close friends and family of hers. They're obviously very protective of her and her legacy. And so for us to be able to tell that story with that sort of intimate access, I think is very powerful for this episode. And for her, it's tough because, she broke into the business. She was actually a child actor, which I didn't know either.
I didn't know that myself.
Yeah, she was a child actor. It blew my mind for all the cinephiles listening. that she was in.
Hey, we don't let those kind of people listen to the show.
she was in Nicholas Rogue's Insignificance, which is pretty amazing, which stars Gene Hackman, of course, R.I.P. But that just blew my mind. But she broke into the wrestling business and instantly developed a deep passion and love for it. And but she kind of broke in at this awkward time where, she broke in 2000, the WCW era. It's like women's wrestling was not what it is obviously today. It wasn't much of a thing. And so I feel like it was I think what's in part tragic about this episode is, she cared so much about the business and wanted to do so much with the business. But it kind of reminds me of our Luna Vachon episode in a way too, where it's like, Luna also wanted to participate in doing more physicality and more things, but there wasn't that sort of role for someone like that.
Yeah.
And so I think she kind of got into this mode, especially with the TNA thing, where it was kind of doing, whatever is asked of you in that moment to do these things. And then looking at kind of what the ultimate cost of that is, if you know what I mean. So, yeah. So
and she was there. I worked with her some in TNA. I think this incident happened. I had already departed, as they say.
Right.
Stacy continued to stay in touch with her on social media. I don't know, Facebook, whatever the kids do. They would stayed in contact until her death, and Stace was broken up to hear about it. But she was definitely gung ho, and
yeah,
and the whole scream and the gimmick. She had personality,
definitely.
And, that's another one of those, I won't even go off on the soapbox about, but have it girls, weapons, table, furniture, concrete matches. But she had personality. She didn't need all of that. She, had some oomph to her.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, as her story is, tragic in several ways, I think it does also spotlight her as a talent and really show what was special about her. And just you can just get this sense of her of like, what had there been more of an outlet at that time for a women's wrestler, like what she would have been able to do, so that is kind of difficult to see. It definitely, the episode does, look into, bipolar disorder and has, very honest conversations in terms of struggling with that. That was a big part of, her struggle in life. But I think it's a very moving tribute to her, and I think it's going to be one that a lot of people are going to be talking about after it airs.
Well, there's another one that, again, I think people are going to be talking about, because even though there's been some highlights of him on Dark Side, mostly with the FMW episode and all that stuff, you are delving into the subject of exclusively the Sheik.
Yes.
A wild man from Syria, the noble Sheik.
Yeah.
And just again, for the footage and the pictures and the stories alone, I'm loving this. Anytime the Sheik can get on TV, we've seen enough of the rivalry between Stone Cold and The Undertaker on Raw from 1999.
Right.
Give me some Sheik on national TV in 2025.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a great process putting this together, working with the family, but it is challenging in a lot of ways getting the real story of the Sheik, because, as he was someone who held his cards so close to his chest, and the importance of kayfabe for him was at the utmost. And it kind of feels like in some ways his family is still trying to be very protective of the, where do you draw the line between the Sheik and Ed Farhat? I know.
Yes. Oh, hey, since I've been doing this podcast, I've heard on social media, I think it was a few years ago, that his son, Captain Ed George, was offended that Jim Cornette and on his show said that the Sheik used razor blades.
There you go. Exactly.
But see, that's the great part of, because even in the wrestling business, most of the people in the wrestling business weren't sure about what the fuck was going on with the Sheik and the whole thing and the mythology.
Right.
Having different people tell the stories from different perspectives, and there's some grain of truth to every single one of them, even if they've been magnified. Mm-hmm. That's part of the fun these days, is this was the last guy that could kayfabe other people in the business.
Exactly. And, it was challenging to produce in many ways because a lot of his contemporaries have passed on. There's not a lot of people around from his, the height of his powers. But of course, we talked to, Sabu, who gives, I think is his best interview he ever has for us. I mean, it's a deeply personal interview. And he's also somebody that, you don't really get, I sort of feel like there's also a mystique about him. And he's very, I think, he goes very personal and he's very emotional about his uncle. And I think it kind of doubles in some ways, his story and his origins with wrestling are absolutely coming up through his uncle. And so I think that's really fascinating. Of course, Rob Van Dam is in it as well, too. He was trained by the Sheik. And I think that's kind of our modern day connection, to someone like him. But yeah, it's a fascinating look at the creation of this character, and the dedication that he had to his craft. And of course, it was something that was very difficult, I think, for him to let go of, when his time was quote unquote up, I mean, he pushed the envelope at a especially with what he did in FMW and WCW, well past his prime, shall we say.
Well, he was a superstar so late.
Yes.
Because
right.
he was a star in the 50s, but he didn't get to be a superstar until he got a hold of Detroit in the 60s and featured himself and had Toronto. Then he could his contemporaries, Bruiser and Wilbur Snyder and those guys, they had 10 years on him where they had been superstars when he's a star on TV.
Right.
And so 20 years later, he didn't want to give it up. But now instead of being, a star for 20 years and he's 40, he's been a star for 20 years and he was 60.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, being that age and being in a wrestling ring surrounded by fire and his skin falling off, and it's crazy. It's absolutely nuts. But
there's such he had such drive to be himself and do what he did for so long, and we've made that one in Bruiser's territory right next door to it an example here on the show so many times of wrestling promotions that just aged out because
right.
the top guys were still the top guys.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And it was because nobody drew more money during the period of time Sheik was hot from 67 to 75. Nobody, right. He was the top drawing box office attraction as a heel in the business. Nobody was drawing money like that. And he was spinning it as fast as he got it, but he dressed the part. He looked the part. He went to Los Angeles and main evented the Olympic Auditorium so he could have his suits made.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing, it's an incredible story.
It is. Yeah. I'm very excited for people to check that out. Definitely. And, but there are, like I was saying, like, Brian Solomon put out that great book, about the Sheik semi recently. And you can imagine sort of the challenges he had too, in terms of, separating fact from fiction, I guess, or trying to find the real story of the real person, Ed Farhat. And I do want to put it out there. I might as well. I mean, we always work on these episodes up until the very end. Like we're locking them the week before they air usually. So if anyone out there, any collectors have any, interviews with Ed Farhat that have been done over the years, man, we would love to get our hands on that if that exists.
Boy, howdy. That would be like the Lost Sea Scrolls, wouldn't it?
It would. I've heard rumor of a few, but I have not seen any of them. So,
but I'll tell you, my favorite Sheik story real quick is that Sheik and Dory Funk Sr. were very close. They'd had a business relationship going back, years and years, where Sheik used to spend lengthy times in the West Texas territory, even after he owned Detroit, because he'd go in and work for Funk Sr. and he knew Dory Jr. and Terry. And so when the Sheik's territory in the late 70s had fallen on hard times in Detroit, Dory and Terry came in and worked with Sheik and Abdullah, this program with the blood and the violence to get the thing up. They were throwing everything out there they could, doing it, boom. And finally, they draw a house one night in Nakobo, but it's not sold out, but it's not like the glory days, but it's at work. And Terry said he was sitting there going, Junior, we're finally going to get a payoff for this thing. And that's when Captain Ed George, the Sheik's son, ran in and said, they've robbed the box office. Because as much money as Sheik gave to down and out wrestlers when he was on top of the world, and he gave guys bookings and gave guys jobs and spent money like water, when the territory was down, the box office got robbed a time or two that year, I think.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And that's another thing. Captain George tried to deny. Terry told me that to my face, and it's been confirmed by, I won't mention, he still lives in Detroit. They might put a hit out on him up there, but a friend of mine. But nevertheless.
There you go. Yeah. Well, I should say that it's pretty exciting because we did interview Dory Funk Jr. for this. So he's in the episode, which is cool.
Excellent.
That was a good bucket list interview for sure.
And there's one more episode where he's kind of a modern day type of Sheik. He was an Arabic affiliated character, but he didn't have the longevity or the success, and not because of his own lack of merits, but because he was the victim of one of the stupidest booking decisions in the history of professional wrestling.
Yeah.
Mohammad Hassan.
That's right. A more contemporary story, I guess. But yeah, man, this episode, I'm very much looking forward to the reaction of, because seeing it all laid out, it's obviously an episode that's been recommended to us many times on social media. Fans have wanted to see, Mark Capani, that's his real name, his story being told, because it's so fascinating where he's cast in this role as an Italian guy, to play this, from a Middle Eastern descent, ostensibly a terrorist, portrayal, off the heels of 9/11. And it's just this powder keg of controversy that he walks into. But it's sort of this, again, it's this dichotomy where here's a chance for me to come out of developmental, with you and OVW, to getting the chance to go zip right to the main event scene, working with, Undertaker and Batista and like all these people.
Yeah.
And it's just an amazing trajectory, but at what cost? You have to play this extremely offensive character that is missing nuance and is offensive on many levels. By today's standards, something that, of course, they would never do. I mean, I think he's one of the only other, along with, I think, Chris Benoit, like, you can't search for his matches on any of the WWE platforms, they've pretty much erased that function
so they've equated him with a murderer.
Well, I don't know,
because
that's the way to characterize it, but it's definitely something they want to, they want to erase from their history.
Well, and that's and I obviously I have contributed something to this episode. Hopefully I've contributed. So I'm going to be on it, but hopefully I've contributed.
I don't think you've ever been cut from an episode, Jim. So
but I know it's coming then. See,
yeah, right.
The odds.
It could be just you in most of these, but go ahead.
But like you said, Mark Capani's his real name, but he was in OVW. He came to one of our tryout seminars and started, as far as I remember, from scratch in the OVW program, and was in great shape, had a great body, great look. Italian guy from Rochester, I believe, or is it Syracuse? I think it's Syracuse.
I think you're right. I think it's
somewhere over there.
Yeah.
And just pleasant to work with, and dedicated, and rose through the ranks. And I've hopefully some of these worked, the VHS tapes that I gave to you. Yes. To your fine researcher, Mr. Boucher.
Yes, shout out.
Bobby Boucher. But he progressed from like dark matches at the flea market show.
Yep.
To television, to being used in the top heel group, to being a top single with his own female valet and a gimmick with the leather pants and the wristbands, and he's gorgeous and he's tan.
Mark Magnus, right?
Mark Magnus. And he went from in like 18 months, he progressed that quickly and was doing a very good job of keeping up with whatever we threw at him.
Mhm.
And then they gave him a developmental deal, and that's all well and good. And then, as I told you, they called me and said, "Well, we want him to be an Arab." I said, "To what?" I said, "He's Italian."
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we had to disrupt what he was doing, where he was doing so well learning with all the guys he was working with, the coaches we had coming in. They take him off television. He can still go to class, but now he's got to revamp his entire gimmick. And
Yeah.
we at least had him as a sympathizer, because Sean Davari
Yep.
came in, and I love Sean Davari as a person. Again, the gimmick, that they were doing here was not my favorite. But at least he's gone away because he had a losing streak, and now he's found a guy with a different ideology to tell him what's up. And also, this guy's got a lot of money, and he's financing this fucking arrogant heel who's also still from fucking New York State, right? But
Yeah, right.
but now he's changed his name. Somebody changed their name to Muhammad in Louisville. People would get it. I said that, right? But then they just take him and they make him a goddamn villain from wherever the fuck.
Well,
it was kingdom of.
Well, no, it was the idea was somewhat interesting in that he was an American, right? And it was in the wake of 9/11 and the sort of Islamophobia that he was him and his family friends were sort of were experiencing. In the wake of that, he was like, no, I am an American, and he was pushing back on the stereotyping of him, but still.
Then where did he get the gang of hooded terrorists to come in the ring with him?
I'll explain.
Just a family man hanging out.
No, because it started out that way. It started out as, I'm an American too, but obviously he was clearly being portrayed as a villain. There was no mistaking that this is still you're supposed to boo this guy, even though he's trying to come from a somewhat sympathetic. It's weird. There was a weird thing about it.
Weird.
More than one weird elements with the idea. But then I think as time went on, and that sort of aspect of the character, that origin of that character played out, they just crossed this threshold at one point, turned up the heat, and no, he's just a terrorist now. And he's anti-American, and he's, So but meanwhile, while all this is going on, there's so much pressure that the network, I believe UPN and others were threatening to drop the shows if they didn't immediately get rid of this character, because there was a lot of controversy where one of their matches coincided with, I think it was the London bombing.
The London bombing. No, it wasn't the match. It was where they held the Undertaker out. Right. They're going to try to behead him with the piano wire.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it was like the
why am I telling you? You just did the show.
Well, we're speaking to the people, but the London bombing had happened, I think, that day or the day before, and then they still aired the match. And they put this little chyron below, trying to cover their tracks and saying how if people were, offended by this,
the beheading
but it was crazy.
The Undertaker, does not reflect the views.
Yes, or whatever it was. But it was crazy, and it's one of those times where then what they did is in response was, all right, we're gonna kind of throw him under the bus for this. And get rid of him as a character. And it's wild going back and seeing the footage. He was in a match with the Undertaker, I think one of the last matches they did, and they literally power bombed him through the entranceway onto the concrete and made it look like he just died. Like, well, he just killed him, so that's it. And then the character was never seen again. So it's this wild trajectory where he kind of was thrown under the bus for all of this. They never repurposed him. They couldn't repurpose him. So the whole this whole trajectory for him is tragic in a way, because he kind of is the ultimate fall guy for this, but it's also the Faustian bargain that you take, when you're going to fast track your way to success at the top, playing in a main event role, but at what cost? What are you signing up for? This crazy freaking thing that's, going to upset so many people and rile up so many people, and also be this heat seeker of a thing. And And he talks about a lot of the experiences he had out of the ring, where it was insisted that he wear, a turban and he wear these things out of the ring, and there were a lot of people who were not happy about that. And he also did kind of get to experience prejudice, as well too, which is also fascinating and just weird, So
and that's I've said it that since now he's a grown, successful adult with a real job in school, helping the young, contributing to society. He probably did better in the long run than if he'd have been stuck in the wrestling business. But he may be the best wrestler whose career only lasted 2.5 years.
Yeah, maybe so. And he does say that he is thankful he went through all this craziness with the character, because it led him to the path of being able to, work with kids in schools and be a vice principal and, do all that stuff. So, but it's a fascinating story. Again, one that people have wanted us to do for so long. And then when you see it, you're like, wow, why did it take us this long to do this? This is a good one, so.
Well, speaking of vice principal, you are the principal part of the Vice TV lineup, because Dark Side of the Ring is the #1 show on the network, and we're going to try to keep it that way for season 6, which begins on Tuesday, March 25th at 10 p.m. Eastern, and figure it out if you don't live in Eastern. And Evan, thank you for being here. Tell Jason we said hello. Thank you. Can't wait to do something for season 7.
Yeah. Oh my God. All right. We'll see.
You got plenty of free time, right?
Yeah, right.
Let's start on season 7 right on. Let's do 20 next time.
Oh my God. They'd probably want it for sure.
All right, Evan Husney, everybody, and we will be right back.
Well, there it is, Jim, your annual conversation with Evan Husney. A lot of the listeners look forward to hearing you guys preview, and I guess review in some sense, what's coming up on Dark Side of the Ring, season 6.
Well, and now we've got, of course, that's on Vice and debuting Tuesday, March 25th, but now there's TV covered. I've got that covered. I'm on a bunch of TV shows this year. I'm in the movies. We got the podcast here. We got the YouTube. What media, my books and publications available at jimcornette.com. What have I not conquered yet? What do we need to go to?
You're not going to like this.
What's that?
We need a Jim Cornette video game.
Oh, for heaven's sake. What would it be?
I think look, it can go a number of ways. If you just want it to be an action game, it's like a kind of a Super Mario kind of game, except it's you, a little guy with glasses, walking around with a tennis racket, just bopping things for points. But then it has to be like enemies that you have to fight, like at the end of every level.
Well, then I'd have to give some kind of royalties to my enemies for depicting them. Or could I just make it confusingly similar to my real enemies?
That's right.
Mince Musso. Look at Cornette, and when you press the button, he kicks the shit out of Mince Musso with his tennis racket.
Oh, the big boss, Devin Kunn.
Work on that for 2026. But that is a good idea, though, Brian. I may need to get another website going just for that. And at the same time, maybe if Evan Husney, if the Dark Side of the Ring business falls through, he can go online and sell his extensive Golden Age comic book collection that I'm so covetous and envious of. But it would revolve around if we could get the people at Shopify to get involved with this and help us all out. Sell these things around the world. As much as you malign him, Hotchkiss Featherbottom's father worked for Shopify. He invented most of the things now that go into the Shopify platform, the checkout, the way that they boost conversions and
that's not true.
Keep carts from going abandoned. Hotchkiss Featherbottom's father, Francois Featherbottom.
No.
He was a French fella.
Who told you this?
Hotchkiss did. When I mentioned that Shopify was one of our fine sponsors, he said, "Oh, my dad did all that stuff."
He's not French.
He started the company.
He's not French, Hotchkiss.
Well, he's not anymore. He is. He's of French descent. He was born on American soil as a result, as a matter of fact, of a French kiss. But his Father Francois was French. He was the
Father
French
Francois?
Featherbottom. He was a great inventor. He invented the French tickler. You didn't know that?
All right, well, let's get away from Father Francois and let's get back to Shopify.
That's what a lot of kids used to say. Get away from Father Francois. He did spend some time in the seminary.
This has nothing to do with our fine friends at Shopify. I just want to add, right now, Shopify has nothing to do with Father Francois or the scandal, the growing scandal around him.
No, they got the memo early. But I'll tell you what, folks, what they can do, nobody does selling better than Shopify, the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. If you've got a business or a product or a dream, if you have a dream, ladies and gentlemen, they will take you to the mountaintop where you can look both ways. And you know what you'll see? Smog and fog. But at least you'll be up there with Shopify. You'll be on the peak of things, where you're going to be hearing that sound, which means you're going to be making money. You're going to be growing your business. Your commerce platform needs to be able to support the weight of your growing business. It's going to get heavier and heavier until it's like an albatross or a lead anchor around your neck. But Shopify will hold you up. So even though the crushing weight of your business is taking its toll on you mentally and physically, you won't be able to sink down into the depths of a pit of quicksand, because Shopify will hold you up and make sure that you're there until the bitter end when your body can take no more. Folks, all you got to do to upgrade your business and get the same checkout that the big boys use is sign up for a $1 a month trial period at shopify.com/JCE. That's all in lowercase, so we get credit for whatever happens here. Shopify.com/JCE. It's a $1 a month trial period. And if you order before midnight tonight, you're going to get a free autographed picture of their founder, Francois Featherbottom, the French fella that invented the French tickler.
No. Listen, let's not. It's one thing joking about Father Francois. Did they run out of those
pictures?
It's one thing joking about Father Francois. We cannot guarantee any kind of giveaway. There is no giveaway. We can guarantee there's no giveaway. You get what you pay for, and your customers are going to get what they pay for, thanks to your working relationship with Shopify.
At $1 a month, you're going to get way more than you pay for. But I guess they ran out of pictures of Father Francois.
They never had the pictures? There are no pictures that I know of.
There were. Damn it, that's just a flat statement.
They never had the pictures. It was the Boston Globe. But anyway,
they got lost in the mail.
Shopify, Baby Doll has the pictures allegedly in the envelope. But Shopify, what's one more time? Not the sound, the promo code, please, sir.
JCE, Shopify.com/JCE, and now.
Yes.
And now it's time for that. Well, what in the world is happening over at the Arcadian Vanguard Network this fine, froggy little week?
Another very serious and professional froggy kind of week on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network. Get information on all the shows on Twitter at Superpodcast or on Facebook at Facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. Of course, each and every day, every morning, get your wrestling news for free from the Wrestling News. No clickbait, no paywall, just the wrestling news. Wherever you find your favorite podcast or from thewrestlingnews.com directly. Want to make mention of the latest episode of Shut Up and Wrestle with Brian Solomon? Another talk with a former WWE co-worker, Tom Carlucci.
Tommy Carlucci.
A TV producer for WWE. Hear this conversation. Another inside look at a bygone era. SUAWpod.com. Our listen. Shut Up and Wrestle with Brian Solomon.
It's like the old James Cagney movie, The Strawberry Blonde. It was the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries.
And of course, the 605 Super Podcast, The Mothership. All right, we're still working on the audio. 605pod.com. Available wherever you find your favorite podcast. Go through the archive. The Mothership.
Well, speaking of still working on things, no, let me just do away with that. Boy, howdy, AEW Dynamite was a work in progress. It's not completely finished, even though they aired it on February 26th. I think it needs some work. Maybe they can fix it in post for a re-release. Oh, this thing, I mean, I'm not going to be here for hours picking it apart, and I could be. But I just want to hit some of the high points. It's not really even our duty at this point to try to impart the stories or the angles or the build of the matches, because it's just everywhere. It's all, what was the title of that movie? Everything, Everywhere, All the Time?
All at once.
All at once. In San Diego, they were jacking it in San Diego this week. And whereas they were, remember we mentioned this as a ratings ploy, they were starting the show off with it, boom, as soon as the show comes up, no open, no theme music, just straight into the arena, and here comes somebody out of the entranceway and they get in a fight. Well, now I almost longed for those halcyon days of yore, because this show, they had Edge pull up in an ambulance and get out and say, this is what the Death Riders are riding home in. And that was it, like a 10-second fucking clip. And then they go to the announcers. And again, Taz and Tony look fine. You would accept them as, of course, without listening to Tony, they look fine. You would accept them as announcers. And here is this fucking self-indulgent clown in this mask. And it just looks ridiculous. And they do endless show billboards. And then we go to a clip of earlier today, MJF got his AEW tattoo removed and cut a promo while the guy was doing whatever you do to remove the tattoo, because he's mad at the fans for not cheering him when he gave their whatever the case. Then they're in the back again, and Adam Page pulls up in what kind of dinky little pickup truck was that thing, or truck of whatever nature? It had bull horns on it, but it looked like something that kids had put together in a fucking, well, a little soapbox derby contest. What was happening there? You're a man about town and knows about vehicles these days.
I think they said he was driving a Prius, but someone else told me it was a Rivian, which is an electric vehicle that stock has been in the toilet for way too long because they don't know what the fuck they're doing. But it was one of those two with horns on top of it.
So it not only has to be funny, but he has to be a pussy while he's being funny. Stone Cold Steve Austin would come in a beer truck, or The Rock comes in his goddamn giant pickup truck, or, you know, Punk came in a Lamborghini or whatever it was. This guy comes in a fucking pussy little truck with goddamn funny horns on it.
He's socially conscious. That's what you want out of your top babyface, the cowboy hangman. The socially conscious hangman.
I don't know if he's goddamn physically conscious. But he pulled up and walked into the arena, and they played his music, and he made his entrance to the ring, and he beat a job guy in 1 minute or so, and then got the microphone, sat down in a chair, and called out MJF. And MJF comes out to the entranceway and throws a white bloody hand towel down that he was holding. I assumed that he had cut himself shaving. And then for about 45 seconds, MJF was back to his old self. He was cutting the promo, but he was back to being a smart ass. And, you know, he's going back to New York to train his tookus off because he's so scared about Adam Page, and he's mocking him, and he's not screaming, and he's not just cussing for the sake of it. A brief period where we can remember once again the good old days. But then he said, and he was awfully worried about Hangnail's friend, and you should check on him. And then he just turned around and he walked out, and the fans were quiet and puzzled, as well as old Mr. Page, the caca cowboy, because it was kind of, huh? And then here it became. As MJF is walking back through the tunnel to exit stage right, and Page is standing there dumbfounded, like, what did he mean by that? On the screen, we are supposed to see Christopher Daniels laying in the back, bloody and profusely bleeding and having been attacked and left laying. Of course, I guess they became friends, Page and Daniels, right after Page crippled Daniels and ended his career. But nevertheless, check on your friend.
He died a warrior's death, was what he said.
Yeah, well, he shouldn't have been resurrected, but that's what we were supposed to see. But what we saw when they cut to the camera going to the screen is the handheld camera moving up on Chris Daniels while he's knuckling himself in the fucking head. And the first thing you see is this guy that's supposed to have been attacked and be down, punching his own self in the face. And there was a lot of, there was a lot of controversy, because people said they put it all over Twitter and it trended, and they've caught him blading himself. No, that's not what it was. But they said it's in 4K and everybody's got a shot of either from the show or a shot of their screen showing the show. And look what stupid shit. And how is Uncle Dave going to explain this and all that kind of stuff? Here's what was happening. First, we'll tell you what was happening. Then we'll try to explain why it happened. Chris Daniels, in my opinion, and I watched this in slow motion, I think he did get legitimate color in the back for this angle, because I could see some blood oozing from a cut. The way the front of his shirt looked, unless he was just able to really, even without having a sweat worked up and out his blood pumping and not in a match, if he was able to go deep enough to get a gusher to goddamn just sit there and drip on his shirt, maybe they augmented the shirt. I don't know. But I think he did get some color for real. But the problem was, apparently, by the time that he got in position and, it was waiting for all these other things to happen, it stopped bleeding. Because what he was doing was he was knuckling himself. If you take, and you can go on YouTube on some of the old matches, you might see a guy or two doing this. It's not uncommon if you know what to look for. But if you've got a gig mark, either a fresh gig mark that's quit bleeding, or if you get juice a lot back in the territory days from the previous night before, instead of cutting yourself again, you can knuckle it and it'll start bleeding. You either take the point of the middle knuckle of your middle finger and do what Chris Daniels was doing, boom, 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 right on the cut. Some guys would make a fist and take the bottom knuckle at the hand of their index finger and kind of the back of their fist to their head, which is it looks a little bit less like you're punching yourself in the face. It's not meant to be seen on camera. It's, another little sleight of hand deal. But he was knuckling himself to get it to bleed more. But it was on camera. It was up there with Hulk Hogan on the Saturday night's main events. They'd give me the count, brother, and start crying over Elizabeth's death or whatever. And so then anybody that's seen that can't unsee it. And then this whole thing is fucking shot. But it doesn't end there. Because but did I explain the knuckling correctly? There could have been some augmentation on the shirt. I think it was legitimate blood coming from his head, and that's what he was doing, because he was given no idea, apparently, or no count from when he was going to be on camera.
I think that's what he was doing, although that's a horrible defense. He was bleeding on camera. No, he was just punching himself in the head.
Yeah, he was just trying to open up an old gig, but that explains that. And how it happened, we'll explain in a second, because there's more. Because when Page gets freaked out over seeing his friend laying there, he goes to the back with a chair, and he's walking through the back, and he's screaming, "Where is he? Where is he?" Now the camera is following Page from behind, so you're looking past him, so you can see that straight out to the back door there of the arena, there are like at least a half a dozen people just standing there. Just standing there. They're not moving. They're not reacting. They're just standing there. And then as Paige turns, you can see that those people would have had a clear view, not only of this Daniels being attacked, but Daniels laying there in a bloody fucking heap. They would have been looking at him already. Is it common that when you're standing in a goddamn public sports arena and you look over 30 feet away and there's a guy laying there covered in blood, that you would not call somebody? But they're standing there. But as Paige turns the corner to the right to go find his friend, the camera's still following him. And in the background, you see the camera crew, the cameraman, the producer, the cable puller, and I think some miscellaneous fucking stooge that were shooting Chris Daniels for the shot on the screen. They either see the camera turn the corner or they are told on an IFB from the truck, get the fuck out of the shot. Because they suddenly go into ninja mood and crouch down and fucking zoom, like run from the. So they're running out of the shot like little rats as Paige goes over and sees Daniels laying there bloody. And then what does Paige do? He turns around and looks to his left and tells a couple of the people that just ran out of the shot, get over here, help him. And they come over with a fucking Kleenex. And it looks like he's been beheaded, like he's had brain surgery, he's covered in blood. And they come over with a Kleenex to blot his head. But if they were 10 feet away, then why wouldn't they already be administering that aid? Because when Paige said, come here, get in here, help him, they were there in 3 steps. It's a goddamn shit show. And then Paige stalks off after they're applying the compresses to Daniels' head. And
he double parked.
And he double parked with the ambulance. No, that was Edge with the ambulance.
Yeah, but how are you going to get an ambulance in there?
Prius, well, the Prius with the fucking bullhorns might have gotten away of the ambulance.
That's right.
The point is, now we've said here's why it's happening. And we've heard this. They've been saying this, that they do not have, apparently, I thought they just may have a quick one or an insufficient one. They don't have any production meetings. Because now we're hearing people are saying, well, Tony doesn't have the show ready in time to have a production meeting before they go do it. Or is that because he's still writing it because he's overworked or he's confused? Or is that because, as we've also heard, a lot of the guys just come in and tell him what they're going to fucking do, which is why it looks like a clip show, a series of different vignettes of wrestling rather than an actual cohesive program. And if they don't have a production meeting, then they are not laying it all out in one place in front of the crew for people to see that it's redundancy repeated redundantly. But the production meeting, not to go off on a soapbox here, but the production meeting is not for the matches or the interviews as relates to how the talent performed them. It is for everybody else, the announcers, the crew, the cameraman, the director, the sound, all the other, it is, the production meeting is for how you shoot the matches and the interviews. And even if the people are doing what they're supposed to be doing, if you're not cueing them before you go live to them and they're punching themselves in the face, that's not good. Or if nobody knows how to get out of the way of the other camera and they're doing it on the air, it looked like that show from the BBC, the Goes Wrong show. The production meeting, which again in the WWE of the 90s or F, the production meeting for a pay-per-view that the bell time was at 8:00. We were having a meeting at 11 in the morning. And in TNA for a 7:00, I think, or 8:00 pay-per-view, it would be noon, even TNA. For television, if it was 7 or 7:30, we were ringing the bell. We were doing a production meeting by 1:00. And that's the WWF. They have a big budget. They have a big crew. Still, whatever I've been involved in, the time may change, but Ring of Honor, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, OVW, TNA, NWA, MLW, other productions that I've been involved in, the crew may be smaller or larger. The time may be different because people may be doing 2 or 3 different jobs or, snatch and grab to get them there. But you have to go over the show in front of the head of each department of the production, as well as the main players like the top handheld camera guys and etc. So that and ask the questions that we've talked about here in the past, when a format's read and they just gloss over something that obviously the announcers would have a question about, how do we cover this? Or the director would have a question, well, wait a minute, how you need to shoot that? You ask those questions, then you bring up what can possibly go wrong, what might not be understood by the viewer, even though we know it because we wrote the goddamn thing and they're just watching it. It's a whole nother set of meetings that you have with the talent on the matches and the finishes and the interviews. That's more meetings, which is why this is such a high stress fucking job when you're on a shoestring budget and doing these productions. But there's a lot of details to nail down. If they're either not having production meetings because Tony doesn't have his shit together, or because the guys are still making up their own fucking morality plays, then that's why that these mistakes are happening and that this shit, in some cases, looks so amateur because they're shooting it on the fly based on what somebody, well, yeah, when that happens, just shoot it. Well, it ain't that fucking easy, morons. And a lot of these guys have never been on, any kind of mainstream television production before, but a lot of them have. But that's what first impressed me about, I'm sorry, I'll get off this box in a second. But that's for what first impressed me about MJF when I met him in MLW. He not only came up and was asking questions of us in the announce booth on, not only bringing up things that he might do that we could say or call, but also just asking us questions. And he asked the crew, the technical crew, questions about the setup or the post-production or how will this look. He wanted to learn everything. And that was instantly refreshing because some of these fucking numbnutses have been in the goddamn business where their primary exposure is on television for 10 years and they don't know how to fucking work television or lay television out or give cues for television or goddamn explain their angle or their match or their finish or their whatever they're going to do for the television crew so that they can understand it. And now I'm fucking pissed off now. Your thoughts?
I don't. There was a lot there.
It's ridiculous. I'm sorry, but it just is. You can't do this on national television. We put more preparation into OVW TV.
Well, you hit on something that's a big topic here. The production meetings or lack thereof. We've heard whispers about it, or we've heard direct comments about it for a while. Stories started coming out just recently again. Brian Alvarez talked about it. The idea that there aren't production meetings, the idea that apparently Tony Khan is not done writing the show until so late in the day that they can't do it. What does that tell you? And why would it take so long to write this show? Where there's long multi-segment matches and... I mean, is there anything that would prevent a production meeting that you see?
Well, but yes, there is. Not that it's not necessary, but I can see what they're doing. There's not just long multi-segment matches, but there's multiple run-ins and everything. And we just saw the fuck up with Thunder Rosa and the other Megan Brain and Penelope Pitstop or whatever, where they didn't know what the fuck was going on, or obviously some part of that equation didn't know what was going on. And if it's last minute shit and inexperienced people, we don't know. But the point is that, again, like I said, it's not that there's a lot of shit going on these shows. There's too much going on, but they could be written in time to do them professionally. And if you are not doing them at the point where they can be finished at noon or 1 the day of the show so you can tell everybody how to do their job, then you need to change the way you're doing the fucking show, don't you? And again, is it because we know that Tony will stay up for hours on end writing wrestling and talking about wrestling, but is it not done because he's waiting after he tells these guys what he wants them to do, what they go and figure out what they're going to do, and then they come back and tell him, and then he knows. I mean, because none of this is cohesive. It wasn't written from one mindset from start to finish as a program with thought given to not repeating the same kind of angles or using the same kind of objects or doing the same things in the finishes or the afterbirths, or even allotting a certain number of shits and other miscellaneous curse words to specific people. It's just whatever gets fucking done in a segment. So is Tony waiting for instructions and then, it's too late to give it out? Or is he just having a nervous breakdown, a mental collapse, and is rushing to make it to air? But something needs to be done different. I mean, we're seeing this more often now.
Even if you're a control freak and it's just about you wanting control over your show, you still have to make sure the production knows what to shoot and what not to shoot and when to do it.
Well, and maybe is this the reason behind the fake walls that they were infatuated with there for a while, wherever they would build a fake drywall wall in an arena to put somebody through it? Were they not consulting the producer of the entire show and the director or anybody in the truck, a cameraman, to say, well, no, that's going to look as phony as a football bat. Of course you can't do that like that. We can't shoot it that way. Is the production crew seeing this for the first time? They're just saying, he's going to run him through the wall and just shoot it. And then so they don't know how to shoot around the fact that there's no stud for 6 feet, which would be against every building code in the United States of America. This shit has to be gone over. It's details. Why do you think I'm a fucking insane person? I'm thinking of all those goddamn things that could go wrong on television shows for 25 fucking years. But you have to. You have to think of everything that can go wrong and walk through every way you can shoot everything. And there's been many times in the past where I couldn't do that because we didn't have the budget or the time, and we were shooting a TV show in a fucking closet somewhere. But at that level, with that budget and that amount of people working for you, every detail ought to be nailed down. That's just my fucking point. And this is ridiculous. But anyway, I want to see a meme on Twitter of that camera crew scurrying away from the shot when they realize that they're in Paige's camera. And then they introduced Don Fallis and Kyle Felcher in a skybox with a spotlight in the arena. Bear in mind, we haven't had a match yet. And then they went back in the back earlier today. Well, first they showed Jericho and Bandito on Collision or whatever it was, and they had just a classic match, according to Jericho. And he's speaking like a real person again in the back with Renee. And he's made a deal with Don Fallis, and Don and Kyle are walking out of the locker room that Brian Keith, the bounty hunter, is going to take out Will Ospreay tonight. So that's the deal. So again, it doesn't make Don look bad because he's a Weasley manager, but doesn't it make Jericho? Well, it makes Don look bad in terms of that he thinks that this could possibly happen. Brian Keith would take out Ospreay. But if Jericho's, this is the best he's got to, And then they go right into that match. We're 15 minutes into the show already, and we got Ospreay versus Brian Keith, the bounty hunter who was introduced at 189 pounds. It's the first time in my life I've ever felt sympathy for the bounty hunter. I hope the little fella doesn't get hurt. The fuck are you there? Who was the people that would collect bounties that heels would put on baby faces in years gone by? Abdullah the Butcher, Bruiser Brody, goddamn King Kong Bundy, whatever. But Brian Keith at 189 pounds, who's never won a match on this television program, but he's going to beat up the top babyface. Actually, he did beat up the top babyface. It took 12 minutes for Ospreay to beat him. I think he could. It might take Ospreay 6 or 7 minutes against a fucking 8th grader. If that, I weighed 189 pounds in 8th grade. That's because of Mama Cornette's cooking. And then
the bounty hunter, Jim Cornette.
Well, there you go. Hey, I'm bigger. I'm right now. I weigh 191 pounds. I'm bigger than Brian Keith. And I got 6 inches on him. And I'm taller too.
Come on.
And then Ospreay jumped out of the ring and ran up the stairs, and Kyle ran down the stairs from the skybox, and they had a short fake fight in the stands that was broken up by security. So there you got that going on. Any comments, or should I move on?
Yeah, there's nothing really to add to that wonderful match.
So we were half an hour into the program with all this nonsense. Then they did a package on Mercedes Moné and Momo Giancana. What is her name? Momo's name?
Oh, I don't want to mispronounce it, and I certainly will because I don't remember it exactly, so I would just be guessing. And
okay, the Mercedes and Momo package, and then there was Mercedes in the back cutting a promo about a Momo wannabe. That's what it is, Momo wannabe.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I didn't realize it was the same one. Yeah.
And then Mercedes sees some girl who's standing there and starts getting snippy with her and slaps a drink out of her hand. And the girl is a lousy actor. And then she identified herself as, you know who I am. And nobody knew who the fuck because she died. Never seen her on this fucking television show before. And then she said, I'm Billy Starks from Ring of Honor. Okay. Do you remember seeing Billy Starks from Ring of Honor on AEW Dynamite?
Maybe once, because I remember we saw her once. She was like 18 years old or something, like still in high school or right out of high school. She was a prodigy. Like
well, there you go. She's from Louisville. She's the one from Louisville. Yes.
Like a Nick Wayne for the women's division.
That's been so long ago. I think she's graduated college by now. She might not have graduated, but she's old enough to. Anyway, she's not a great actor, but she was telling Mercedes off when Momo came up from behind Mercedes with a baseball bat, and Mercedes turned around and looked at her and screamed and ran off. So we are getting... Again, they could have got something out of this flop that Mercedes has been by Harley going over the other day, or at least we get a rematch, but instead we get Mercedes and Momo wannabe. What is the matter with these people? Why do they think that anybody's going to give a shit about Momo?
And this is them establishing Momo, because other than that, she's an unknown entity on this program.
But she's got a bat. We don't want no Momo. So then we got the Outriggers versus Brian Cage and Lance Archer. And I wrote, what the hell? They had a match. The Hurt Syndicate music played. One of the Outriggers dropped behind Lance Archer and rolled him up 1, 2, 3. And the Hurts then smiled in the entranceway. But so just, I can understand if a guy jumps up on the apron or throws something into the ring at you or whatever. But when music plays, why do people have to turn in that direction and stand there dumbfounded, even if the fucking person whose music is playing is coming out. He's fucking 75 feet away. You can kick this guy in the balls real quick and get away with it. But that's now on both companies. Music plays, everybody freezes like they're fucking frozen in amber. Standing there with their jaws on the ground. Oh my God, it's music. I'm grumpy, ain't I?
No, I mean, it is one of those logic loopholes in wrestling. Unless they really dig the tune, I guess. But I guess we get Hurt Syndicate.
It's not like it's Desperado.
Are you ready for Hurt Syndicate versus Cage and Archer?
Well, yes and no. Because Cage, I'm just, if he was going to get it, he'd got it by now, and Archer needs a good long break and come back with some consistency. Maybe he'll go away and learn a new hold. But if the Hurts can get anything out of him.
He was off TV for like a year and a half or something.
Well, that's. If anybody can get anything out of them, is what I'm trying to say. Shelton and Bobby can. We will see what happens, but at least they're strong enough to dictate the direction of the thing and keep the pace going. Because otherwise, those two guys are so big. If their opponents are smaller, they can't move them around. Nevertheless, we were at almost 9:00 now, and then I swear to, at 8:55, here comes Swerve Strickland and Prince Nana. And they do a promo on Ricochet. And then Ricochet comes out, and he's still wearing the embassy robe that was stolen from Prince Nana. I wonder if they had to shorten it for Ricochet to wear it. Seems like it would be dragging the ground. The fans booed the shit out of Ricochet, which was the loudest of the night, because I think they legitimately now do not like him because he's such a putz. He's like a discount Dominic Mysterio. So they're trying to do the boo thing over him. There's not enough people in the building. But Nana and Swerve want a rematch, and Ricochet doesn't want it. And then Nana says, well, the winner will be the #1 contender for the AEW title. And then Ricochet says, well, okay, but not tonight. We'll do it at Revolution. So that means that either Swerve Strickland or Ricochet would then face Jon Moxley for the AEW title if they indeed honor the #1 contender stipulation. Do you want to see Ricochet versus Dick the Boozer?
Yeah, actually, that sounds like it could be all sorts of what the hell are they doing working together? Yeah, I'd like to see that. I don't want to see any more Swerve. I'm sick of Swerve.
Well, that's the problem, is we're going to be stuck with Swerve versus Dick the Boozer, and we've seen that already. So they're probably not going to end up going through with the stipulation. But anyway, Ricochet looked like a small child in this shot. And then right at the 9:00 hour, they're done with that business, and Ricochet left. But Nana then said, I got to talk to you, boss. And he tells Swerve that he's been working hard, making the AEW title and, everything. But Swerve has to go back to the dangerous guy that he used to be. Should be the #1 priority. And Nana's taking a lot of bullets for Swerve, so Nana needs Swerve to get that robe back, or elsewise I just don't know if I can do this anymore. And then Nana walked out on Swerve. And do what anymore? Constantly be the weak link? If they keep saying that Nana's done all these things for Swerve, but every time it's portrayed as he's the fucking flunky. He got one time he bowed up and got some balls to him, right? But anyway, now Nana's threatening Swerve that he's going to bail on this whole sweet, sweet fucking bird's nest on the ground they got, unless Swerve gets Nana's bathrobe back from the fucking nerd flippy-doo guy. This is gripping fucking adult entertainment.
All right, well, Ricochet, wrestler name or a porn star, Jim?
Well, because I'll tell you what, if he got Peter North, he might bounce back. So now we got Adam Cole, Roderick Strong, and Kyle O'Reilly against FTR and Danny Garcia. And is this a rib? Now, who are the heels here? And no, FTR's been teaming up with Edge. Danny Garcia is supposed to be the young, fair-haired boy, even though he doesn't have any hair. But Cole and Roddy and O'Reilly, weren't they just baby faces? Weren't we just supposed to like them? Because who were they? I'm so confused. And FTR came out, nobody gave a shit. Garcia came out, nobody gave a shit. Except Cole and Roddy and O'Reilly, except for the fans like to hit their cues on the Cole music. They didn't give a shit here either. They've nullified all these fucking guys. And then we talked about when I mentioned on the Raw match, the incredible finish, and that it was brilliant. That's what made the match spectacular. And they did a bit of that. FTR did a bit of that themselves back in the old days, having a really good finish before they ended up here where guys couldn't keep up with them. But this was, Dax got the sharpshooter on Roddy. O'Reilly came up and got a front face lock on Dax while he still had the sharpshooter. But Cash got the abdominal stretch on O'Reilly from behind. And while all that went on, Garcia was going to give Cole a pile driver, and Cole just double-legged him and jackknifed him 1, 2, 3. And everybody stood there. And then Garcia offered a handshake to Cole, and Cole was going to take it, but O'Reilly kicked Garcia's hand, so Cash shoved O'Reilly. And then they all started shoving each other, and Cole and Garcia were the ones that I think were calming the others down. And then we got word that Tony Khan had announced that Saturday night on Collision, it's going to be Adam Cole versus Danny Garcia for the TNT title. And there was no people didn't give a shit to any of this. This is if this is what's taking him so long to put together, maybe make it a little fucking simpler. Did you have any pertinent thoughts on this, Brian? I hate to be keeping you up.
The crowd was noticeably silent at the start of this in an awkward way. I hear one of the kids screaming in the background. It's getting late here, folks. No, I have nothing else to add to this.
I thought that was that special panic room you had put in. Every time you put somebody in there, they panic.
That's not the case, but let's move on with Dynamite because let's not get stuck on this match.
Okay, in the back, where it's always dangerous. The shit's happening in the back. In the back, Claudio Castagnoli is looking for Edge. He's walking through the hallway looking for Edge. Guess what happened within 5 seconds of this shot coming up on the air, Brian?
He found Edge.
No, Edge found him.
Well, I mean, that's what I meant.
Edge jumped him. What the fuck? They just happened to come up at the exact moment that this Pearl Harbor attack. They get in a fight and they go out in the arena. Never seen anything like that before. And they fight walk to the ring. And then there's Wheelie Useless out to jump Edge, and they beat Edge up with a chair. But then Jay White came out in the entranceway. And they turned around because his music was playing, and Edge, who had just been beaten mercilessly with a chair, got up and took the chair away and beat up Claudio and Wheeler. And then Marina Shafir jumps in the ring, and she jumps on Edge's back. And while she's on his back, Wheelie comes with the knee, but Edge moves, and Wheelie hits Marina with a knee, and she goes down and stays there. Immobile, unconscious, potentially stone cold graveyard dead. We never see her move a muscle again. Bear in mind. Jay White now gets in the ring laughing at all the things that have transpired and gives Wheeler his finish. And then Edge takes a chair and starts wearing Claudio out. And then puts Claudio on the chair and milks a concerto and does it, and you could see right through it. They had the shot from the side. Not only did you could see through it, but now the person taking it is not selling it in any way. Their body doesn't spasm, their legs don't flap, their arms don't twitch, nothing happens. Because for one, they're already ludicrously unconscious for a long period of time, and they're being placed on a chair and expected not to be able. There are people in medically induced comas that have more movement than the people that are being put on this fucking chair. And of course, they don't want to move beforehand because they'll get their brains knocked out. But it is the phoniest, stupidest fucking movie. It can't be done realistically. Unless the guy's brain explodes into tomato sauce and blood shoots everywhere, it's a bullshit thing. So he milked it and he did it. And Claudio just lays there, didn't move a muscle when he got hit. Then Dick the Boozer comes to ringside, our friend Mr. Moxley, and he pulled Wheeler over the rail to save him. And in the ring, there was Edge pulling Marina Shafir over to set her up for a concerto. She is still completely unconscious from the knee that she took, and it's been at 2 to 3 minutes. I mean, if you're that unconscious, normally there's brain damage involved, right? That long. And he milked it forever. Was he going to do it? Is he not going to do it? And then music plays. And here comes Willow. And Willow just comes down and rolls into the ring. And Jay White is down on the floor with a chair holding Dick the Boozer back from coming over the rail. Now he's scared of something. Jay White with a chair, when he's been beating up 4 baby faces at a time, Jay White with a chair, fuck Marina, she's on her own. And Willow gives the concerto to Marina Shafir. It also looks bullshit. And also she doesn't move a muscle, doesn't even twitch. And they've been immobile. They're laying there for minutes to begin with. I mean, people turn over in their fucking sleep. And then they played music and went to the break. And I said, good God. And it was 9:30. Have I overstated the case of how rotten this was and how nobody gave a fuck and how phony it looked?
I thought it was awful, but I thought it was just me because I think all the Moxley stuff is awful. And again, he's trying to look concerned, and luckily Willow's music hit, because why run into brain someone if you don't have your pleasant music playing?
Well, and they couldn't have Edge do it because that would be a guy hitting a girl with a chair. So instead of just saying maybe we shouldn't give the girl brain damage with the chair in terms of what the fuck, she's going to come back next week, her eyes not black, her nose isn't broken, her cheekbones, she got no cuts, no lumps from that. But that's what they did there. And they had the go home stretch, half an hour. So they stuck Harley Cameron and Deonna Purrazzo in that spot. That happened, and that took a while. Unfortunately, I looked away. But then in the back, as a continuation of what had just gone on, Claudio and Marina have been loaded into the back of the ambulance. They're on the gurneys. And they're still totally unconscious, totally immobile. They're not moving. And the ambulance drivers and the people are in there. And then the doors close, and it's Edge, Jay White, and Willow that are closing the doors and give the ambulance the pat on the door for them to pull out. When's the last time that you saw the people that injured the person allowed to be the people that closed the door on them and after they put them in the ambulance? I wrote, is this written by a third grader? And then finally we come to the main event. Just when I thought it can't get any worse, it can get worse. The main event was for the Intercontinental title with Pockets against Take a Shit. And again, and I call him Take a Shit because if they want us to take him seriously, they wouldn't do shit like this with him. To put him in with the way past stale joke. like, 6-month-old Fritos. Just, bleh. They need to fold their tent. If this is the best they can do, if a television program that started out with a guy punching his own self in the face on camera and ends up with a ridiculous clown joke match that matters not to anything involving the worst goof in the company, they need to fold up if that's the best they can do. Yes, I used the Wolfman in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, but not on top and mostly in tag team matches. And Tony doesn't need the job guy clown's rich friend to put money in the company because he's got his own. So, and Pockets doesn't have a rich friend except for Tony. So why is he still on fucking television in any capacity? It's just unprofessional. And they didn't get a run over or an overrun, or they may have got run over. I don't know. Because they actually had soccer on after this show. Instead of Joe Schmo or reruns of Modern Family, they had to get out on time. So they've lost that opportunity to artificially inflate, although lately it's been deflating Pockets' numbers. But that was a Dynamite episode of Dynamite, Brian.
Well, you mentioned the numbers. Why don't we speak about them with some specifics here?
Well, speak specifically about the specificity of their species.
AEW Dynamite ratings. I don't know about the species, but AEW Dynamite ratings, February 26th, Wednesday night on TBS, 8 to 10 p.m., not counting Max, 598,000 viewers.
Ouch. Well, it's not far, but they dropped below the 600,000 mark again, even though they've been at 604 and 605. So it's more of a moral defeat rather than a huge drop from the miserable numbers they've been doing.
Dynamite ranked approximately number 5 for the night on cable in the key demo. Number 1, the 76ers versus the Knicks, followed by the Spurs versus the Rockets. When you hear those names, should they come up with better tag team names, AEW, and try to compete with any of these other? And then Fox News actually takes over here. Let's go now to the quarterly hour breakdown. Quarter 1, these were compiled by WrestleNomics. Quarter 1, 8 to 8:15 p.m., the MJF Tattoo promo, Aaron Solo versus Adam Page, the post-match with MJF and Christopher Daniels, the Jericho promo, and promo, his confrontation with Callis, and the Will Ospreay entrance, 735,000 viewers.
Good Lord. Okay, I believe that was a better open than they did last week, and not what they used to do, but still something, and they're going to drop like a stone, it looks like, to make this average.
Well, we go to quarter 2, Will Ospreay versus the Bounty Hunter, Brian Keith, 8:15 to 8:30 p.m. with picture-in-picture ads. 682,000 viewers.
And that's 53,000 people, not as big as a lot of their quarter 2 drops are. So we'll have to wait to see who the real culprit is.
And quarter 2 is up on the 90-day trend here. Quarter 3, 8:30 to 8:45 p.m. An ad break. Mercedes Moné and Billy Starks' promo. The Outrunners
or Billy
video,
Spears.
The Outrunners video, and the start, or the entirety, of the Outrunners versus Brian Cage and Lance Archer with picture-in-picture. 636,000 viewers.
Ouch. Okay, now there goes another nearly 50,000. We're 100,000 down, 99 to be exact, from the start in 45 minutes. This is starting to go, well, still, that's not as bad as normal.
Well, quarter 4, 8:45 to 9 p.m. John Moxley and Adam Copeland's video, or just Cope, an ad break, and the Ricochet Swerve Strickland live promo. 635,000 viewers.
Well, they 1,000 different. They pretty much stayed flat. So that's a tribute to those folks holding what they had. Not looking good for the final quarter, is it?
Well, if you look at the rundown of what's on the remainder of the show, ask me what would hold an audience. We go now to the big 9 o'clock hour, quarter 5, 9 to 9:15 p.m. The Undisputed Kingdom versus Daniel Garcia and FTR with picture-in-picture ads. 571,000 viewers.
Ouch. At the top of the hour, they lost 64,000 people. That's not a good sign.
No, it is not. We go now to quarter 6, 9:15 to 9:30 p.m. The post-match with Cope and the Death Riders. An ad break. The Harley Cameron and Deonna Purrazzo entrances. 523,000 viewers.
Okay, there went another 48,000. Now we are 212,000 down from the start.
Well, we go now to quarter 7, 9:30 to 9:45 p.m. The continuation of Cameron versus Purrazzo with picture-in-picture ads and the Orange Cassidy Takeshita video, followed by an ad break. 497,000 viewers.
Oh, Lord, they're getting to the point where they're finishing in the fours on Wednesday night. We've been covering this for a while, and it ain't been happening until lately.
Well, we go now to quarter 8, 9:45 to 10 p.m. No overrun this week. Konosuke Takeshita versus Orange Cassidy, picture-in-picture ads. 502,000 viewers. The final 3 quarters, all under 200,000 in the key demo. 193, 196, 198.
And old Pocket's got 5,000 people across the country to come back from the bathroom long enough to see him there. So they lost from start to finish 233,000 viewers out of starting with 735, 233, 466, 690, 70. They lost 30%, maybe 31% of the audience that they started with. That's a pretty hefty chunk. Not unsuspected, not surprising, but still disheartening if you were pulling for these people to make a turnaround in their malaiseful ratings.
You need talent. You need the booking, but you also need the talent. And there are very few people there who make you get excited about seeing them. I have to see what they're going to do the next week. There's very few people, very few angles, very few feuds right now.
Actually, I want to see almost everybody in AEW next week.
Oh.
Rather than this week, if I could wait a week to see any of them, it would help me out.
Well, that was AEW Dynamite.
Well, and this is my show, and it's over with. We've had just a full plate today, a potpourri of things, and the drive-thru is coming up in a few days whenever we get to do that, and the experience will be back next week. And Brian, if you have no more questions, you're free to leave. Thank you, fuck you, and bye-bye, everybody.